Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. Neither of them had the heart to tell him the cow was probably just drinking at the guild again. Then again, Romeo likely knew what his father was like. Maybe in his young eyes, that's just what adults did. Romeo seems proud to have a wizard for a dad. Rhodes mused. Yeah. He's the opposite of Wakaba's daughter. Myra added, remembering a complaint Wakaba had voiced recently. Apparently she's been really upset with him lately, and things have been tense with his wife too. He's not exactly winning Father of the Year. Rhodes chuckled. He remembered he and Myra had once stepped in to calm things down between them. They continued chatting idly about guild gossip as they walked, and before long, they arrived at the restaurant Myra had mentioned. And just as she'd said, the variety of cuisine was impressive. Once again reminding Rhodes of how much of the world he still had left to experience. The two of them ordered a hearty meal. Chestnut braised chicken, cumin mushrooms, pine nut corn, steamed clams, stir-fried pork with green peppers, and a savory lotus root and pork rib soup. Since they usually ate at the guild, Myra had become quite familiar with Rhodes' preferences and taste in food. No wonder she'd said he might like this place. What's wrong? Myra smiled, amused by Rhodes' surprised expression. It was quite a rare and charming look on him. Rhodes looked at her, a little stunned. Just surprised. Thank you. Aha, so I was right after all. Myra gave him a playful wink with her left eye, light dancing in her expression. Rhodes thought to himself that this kind of flirting was unfair and probably against some sort of rule book. But he wasn't about to complain. It was late autumn, and the two had also ordered some fresh seasonal vegetable soup, which turned out to be surprisingly flavorful. Not only was the chef excellent, but Rhodes' mood was also light and lifted. He ended up enjoying the meal more than he expected. Slow down, I'm not going to steal your food. Myra teased, gently pouring a small bowl of soup and sliding it over to him. She was already used to how focused Rhodes became when he ate something he liked. These dishes didn't seem too complicated to learn. Maybe next time she could try cooking them herself? After a while, they both put down their chopsticks and continued chatting leisurely over their bowls of soup. Just then, a cloaked figure with a mask and a staff passed by the front of the restaurant. The moment he noticed the two inside, he tossed his cloak in a dramatic flourish. Then vanished like a phantom into thin air. Rhodes blinked, soup bowl paused midair. Was that? It was Miss Togan. Myra said calmly, as if she were used to this sort of thing. Rhodes couldn't help but complain. He goes around so covered up, yet every time he comes to the guild, he just puts everyone to sleep. What's the point of the disguise? That guy was a mystery wrapped in cloth. Headscarf, mask, bandaged arms and legs. He looked like he'd just escaped from a hospital ward. To be safe. Myra said with a soft blink. I thought you, of all people, would understand that. How would I? Wait, are you saying you've lumped me in with the weirdos now? It's not me. Myra said sweetly. It's everyone. She gave him a teasing smile. Still, even if you're a weirdo, you're a reliable one. Are we still talking about me, or Mr. Miss Togan? Rhodes rubbed the back of his neck. He always takes high-difficulty missions, doesn't he? Rhodes knew Myra had never personally handled one of Miss Togan's commissions, but as the one who helped run the guild's request board, she definitely saw the task logs. And she loved a good mystery. No, actually, he accepts a lot of normal missions too. Myra said thoughtfully. Sometimes he takes jobs that send him really far away, but the reward isn't all that much. Not by his standards. It kind of feels like he's doing it on purpose, just to travel. Maybe he's the wandering type. Rhodes guessed. Like, he wants to explore Fiore through missions or something. Myra gave a small shake of her head. Maybe, but ever since the Harvest Festival, when you and Gray were out, he's been staying close to Magnolia. It's strange. There's no clear pattern to his movements. Has he ever teamed up with anyone? Not once. Myra replied. He always works solo. Rhodes leaned back in his seat. Feels like he's hiding some huge secret. A mage that mysterious couldn't just be aimlessly drifting from job to job. Maybe, like Natsu, he was secretly searching for someone important while using guild missions as a cover. I should start keeping an eye out for anything strange near the city. Rhodes muttered. You never know what clues he might be leaving behind. Still, that idea of traveling across the country on missions, it stuck with him. If he could get stronger. Much stronger. Maybe he could do that too. Go on a journey of his own. And if the timing was right, maybe he could even ask Myra to join him. Form a team. A real one. Chapter 134, Aren't you and Myra already dating? On the way back, Rhodes kept glancing over his shoulder and scanning his surroundings. Myra eventually asked. What are you doing? I don't know. Rhodes said, unsure. I just have this weird feeling, like someone's watching us. Did you notice any suspicious stares? Myra shook her head, responding out of habit. There are always people staring, but none that felt unusual. Rhodes suddenly had a revelation. Oh, I almost forgot that I've got a big star walking beside me. You're used to being the center of attention. That's right. Myra said with a playful huff, lifting her chin and putting on an aloof expression. Want an autograph? Yes, yes. But I don't have my autograph book with me. Can you sign my hand instead? I promise I won't wash it afterward. You're being weird again. Myra smacked his hand away, laughing. What kind of person asks for a hand autograph? Honestly though. Rhodes said, slightly serious. You're probably so used to being stared at that you might not even notice if you're being watched by someone with bad intentions. There aren't any bad guys in town. Myra replied breezily. If someone is following us, it's probably someone from the guild pulling a prank. Rhodes paused. That, actually wasn't impossible. He'd made enough of an impression lately that a little jealousy here and there wouldn't be surprising. Not that anything happened on the way back. Still, it irked him. Was that mysterious creep trying to mess with his mood the whole time? Low blow. If Rhodes ever found out who it was, he'd make sure they regretted it. That afternoon, Rhodes stuck to his regular work and training schedule. In his spare time, he visited the library again. But this time, he didn't just focus on books about practical knowledge. He picked up novels, art books, and even some materials on painting and theater. After all, art is a mirror of culture. And a key to understanding the spirit of this world. For someone like Rhodes, who still felt like a stranger in it, art was a way in. A way to truly belong. Besides, he didn't want to be clueless if someone brought up a movie later. Yes, movies existed in this world too, often produced by performance troupes and shown using enchanted projection crystals. Magnolia even had its own movie theater. Rhodes was thinking, when the time was right, maybe he could invite Myra to watch one together. Or if the timing wasn't right? Well, then he could always use the excuse of, I don't get this stuff. Can you explain it to me? No rush. He could wait for the right moment. That evening, they trained again. Myra was especially focused when teaching Rhodes hand-to-hand combat and even suggested they spar. Rhodes could overpower Myra easily now if he relied on his magic and raw strength. But doing that didn't feel right. And frankly, it wouldn't be much fun. So, he held back, fighting like a regular person instead. Their sparring session ended up looking more like a choreographed martial arts scene than a real fight. And truthfully, Rhodes found it impossible to go all out against Myra like he could with someone like Kana. After a few rounds, Myra picked up on it too. It was clear Rhodes wasn't aiming for any critical points. Maybe we should wait for Elfman to get back. She offered with a slight laugh. Then I'll train you both together. Sounds good. Rhodes agreed with a smile. It really would have been better to train with Elfman. But in the middle of the night, Rhodes suddenly woke up with a pang of regret and slapped his own forehead. I gave you the perfect chance, and you didn't take it. HRRGH. Worm opened one sleepy eye. Was his master dreaming about food again? The next morning, just as Rhodes was about to head out to the backyard for training, someone suddenly stopped him. Elzik. Rhodes paused when he saw the normally reserved gunslinger hesitating to speak. What's up? Elzik looked a little flustered. Are you free right now? I was wondering if I could buy you a drink. Sure. Rhodes said, curious about what this was about. He sat down casually at the counter. What are you having? No. Not here. Elzik suddenly grabbed Rhodes by the arm. Let's go somewhere else. Hey. Rhodes was dragged outside mid-sentence. He twisted around and called back into the guild. Myra. I'm heading out for a bit. Myra smiled and waved at him from behind the counter, but something about the situation felt odd. Chico's coffee shop. Rhodes stirred the coffee in his cup with a small spoon, clearly not thrilled. Why'd you suddenly bring me to a place like this? Elzik scratched his head awkwardly. I thought it'd be quieter here. Sorry, you don't like coffee? It's not that. Rhodes glanced around the shop. In front of them sat a couple. Behind them, another couple. Don't you think this is a weird setting for just the two of us? Only then did Elzik realize the setup looked like a date. Should we change seats? Nah, forget it. We're here now. Rhodes set the spoon down and raised an eyebrow. Alright, what's this super secret talk you needed? Elzik looked even more uncomfortable now. I wanted to ask you something. Rhodes gestured with his hand. Shoot. Elzik leaned in a little and, with genuine embarrassment, asked. How did you manage to invite Myra out on a date so naturally? Rhodes tensed up, almost on guard. Wait a minute. You want to ask Myra out too? And no. Not Myra. I meant. Well. Elzik stumbled over his words, face red with embarrassment. He paused for a second, then downed his entire cup of coffee in one go. Fueled by a sudden burst of courage, he finally blurted it out, it's Biska. I want to ask Biska out. Oh, Rhodes relaxed at once, laughing at his own misunderstanding. He'd nearly forgotten that Elzik had a long-standing crush on Biska. But shouldn't you be asking Loke for advice on how to ask a girl out? At the mention of Loke, Elzik's expression grew uncomfortable. I did. Right after the Harvest Festival. I asked him for advice, and he just told me to go confess directly. To be precise, it was right after the Miss Fairy Tale contest, when Elzik realized he cared more for Biska than he had before. So he turned to the so-called expert. Loke. But how can a normal guy just walk up and confess? And then that bastard Loke actually said. Elzik slammed the table. He said that if I didn't make a move, he would ask Biska out himself. Rhodes could clearly feel the progression of emotions as Elzik transitioned from calling him Loke to that guy and finally to that bastard. But, Rhodes suspected Loke probably said that just to motivate him to be brave and take action. Unfortunately, it had the opposite effect. Now Elzik saw him as a romantic rival instead. Then again, given Loke's reputation. He once tried to court Ursa. Anyone in Elzik's shoes would be freaking out. The bitterness must have gone straight to his head, because Elzik kept ranting, you know Loke is smooth when it comes to women. I'm worried he'll really do it. I can't even focus on my jobs lately. Case solved, Rhodes thought. This must be the distraction the guild master was talking about. So it's Loke's fault that Elzik has been off his game lately. Though to be fair, Elzik wasn't totally innocent either. If you're that worried, Rhodes said. Why not just confess to Biska yourself? That's the whole reason I'm struggling. Elzik groaned, ruffling his own hair. I'm hopeless at that stuff. That's why I came to you. To ask how you managed to make progress with Myra so naturally, even without a confession. Rhodes sighed, feeling a bit guilty. I get where you're coming from, but I've never actually been in a relationship either. Elzik looked at him skeptically. Wait, aren't you and Myra already dating? Rhodes smiled sheepishly. I appreciate you saying that, but to be honest, we're not officially together. Not yet. Elzik raised an eyebrow. Really? You two went out yesterday, laughed and chatted like a couple the whole time. The only thing you didn't do was hold hands. Rhodes chuckled at that. Elzik sure had a way with words. Wait a second. Rhodes suddenly slammed his hands on the table and shot up. How do you know all that in such detail? Chapter 135, you can't just go get injured so the guild master takes you in, can you? The customers in the cafe glanced over at them, and the two quickly lowered their voices to apologize for disturbing anyone. Rhodes sat down and continued glaring at Elzik. Elzik apologized immediately. I'm sorry, really sorry. I just wanted to see how you pulled it off, so I followed you. I promise I won't do it again. Rhodes frowned. Then how come I never noticed you? I even looked around so much, and Myra didn't sense anything either. Elzik scratched the back of his head, embarrassed. Well, since my magic style is all about firearms, my best tactic is to take down enemies from long range. So to match that, I've practiced some skills in stealth and observation. Stealth and observation. Are you sure it's not tracking and spying? Rhodes squinted at him. Sounds like you've been leveling up the peeping Tom skill tree. Elzik raised a hand. I swear, this was the first time I've ever used it for this kind of thing. And it'll be the last. Great, I feel so honored. Rhodes deadpanned. This was ridiculous. The first time someone tailgates someone for romantic recon, it's him. Because of that, he'd spent half the date half distracted trying to figure out who was tailing them. He could have spent that time actually looking at Myra more. Elzik knew he was in the wrong and tried to make up for it by apologizing repeatedly and even offered to pay for everything. Order whatever you want. Really? Even if I go broke, I'll just wait for Chico to come rescue me. Rhodes couldn't bring himself to be that cruel. He only ordered 3 of the most expensive desserts. 1 to eat there, 2 to go. Elzik looked pained, but he accepted his punishment. The desserts were free and delicious, though, so Rhodes counted that as fair compensation. Once they'd calmed down, Elzik brought the conversation back to its original topic. Relationships. The truth was, Rhodes didn't really know how to help. He didn't quite understand what was holding Elzik back. I mean, if you like Biska, then just talk to her more. Invite her to eat or go out. Use some silly excuse like, "My cat can do a backflip, wanna come see?" But for Elzik, even coming up with an excuse was too much. How about writing a letter? Rhodes suggested. If you can't say it in person, maybe writing it down will help. Elzik slumped. Can't do it. The second I start writing, I picture her standing in front of me. It's like she's there. Seriously? Rhodes blinked. That's some powerful imagination. You've basically mastered the art of seeing the person through the letter. And what am I supposed to do? Wait for Biska to start talking to me? If that's possible. Elzik muttered, then looked hopeful. But how did things start with you and Myra? Honestly? Rhodes sighed. We're not even dating yet. Elzik gave him a doubtful look. No, really. I'm flattered you think so, but technically, nothing's been made official. Rhodes leaned forward. If I had to say when it began, it was probably when I first woke up in the guild and she was the one taking care of me. Don't tell me you're planning to get injured on purpose in the woods so the master has to assign Biska to take care of you? Rhodes added with a smirk. Is that a bad plan? Elzik actually looked like he was considering it seriously. Snap out of it. Rhodes smacked the table. That's a terrible idea. This guy was hopeless. Rhodes leaned back and reflected. Honestly, Myra and I just naturally got close. We work together a lot, talk often, it just happened over time. If I had to say when there was a bit of progress between us, it was probably when I went out on my first mission. Rhodes muttered, not entirely confident in his answer. Still, ever since then, he'd felt a little closer to Myra. Whether it was asking her out for a meal or doing something together, there was always a perfectly natural reason. So, Rhodes continued. Why not think about it again and try inviting her to form a team with you? But the moment he mentioned teaming up, Elzik's mood visibly dropped. I've kind of been messing up lately, and the master told me to take a proper break. Oh. Rhodes blinked. That might have been his fault. He chewed his cake a little slower, tasting a hint of guilt beneath the sweetness. Well, even better then. Rhodes quickly recovered. Use this time to build up some courage. And maybe look for a good mission you two could take together. Trying to lift his friend's spirits, he added. I'll help keep an eye out too. And if you still haven't worked up the nerve by the end of the month, I'll step in and help you. Elzik's face lit up. Thanks, Rhodes. You're the most reliable summoner around. What's that got to do with summoning? Rhodes muttered under his breath with a wry smile. Whatever. You got this. He left the cafe with 2 boxed desserts to share with Myra. In return, Myra invited him to try a new seasonal drink Cook had prepared in the kitchen. Rhodes gained a treat. And Elzik gained hope. Everyone was walking toward a brighter future. From that day on, Rhodes kept a close eye on Elzik's courage meter. He monitored the progress daily, watching and waiting. The results? Not great. Even as Rhodes was out learning to fly in his raptor form, Elzik still hadn't taken a single step forward. It wasn't until the very last day of the month, October 31st, that Elzik finally approached him with that familiar look of desperation. Yeah. Rhodes sighed, glancing at Makarov. Master, I want to team up with Elzik for a mission. Of course, no problem. Makarov's eyes instantly lit up, shaking off the sleep from earlier. When are you heading out? Do you need to borrow a magic book? A crystal? Anything? Rhodes gave him a blank stare. Do you just want to get rid of me? Ha, no, I just think Elzik has rested long enough. Makarov chuckled. Of course, he wouldn't admit that he was secretly hoping for one less person around to nag him about his drinking. It's the mission to capture that bandit gang. No need to bring magic books or anything like that. Makarov looked pleased. Had Rhodes really become more laid back? Just don't bring too much. Rhodes added. Okay, maybe not that laid back after all. Makarov nodded. It's up to you, then. Myra, what's the situation with the mission? According to the intel, the bandit gang has over 60 members. Myra said, blinking meaningfully at Rhodes. Isn't that a little much for just 2 people? Her expression clearly told Rhodes, don't just think about your flashy magic crystals. Say the right words. Rhodes caught the signal and nodded thoughtfully. Yeah, that's true. Is there anyone in the guild whose magic would work well with ours? Elzik blinked, finally realizing. Wait, weren't they supposed to team up with Biska? Why was he hearing just the 2 of us now? But when Myra mentioned adding someone else, his heart jumped. His eyes practically sparkled as he stared at her, silently chanting, Biska, Biska. He looked like he was trying to transmit the name directly into her brain through sheer willpower. The terrain where the bandits are hiding is rugged, Myra said. Long-range magic would work best. Elzik perked up. This was perfect. He and Biska specialized in long-range magic. But you two already have long-range abilities, Myra added with a mischievous smile. So, maybe bring Natsu and Happy along? They can handle close-range combat and even provide aerial support. Elzik's excitement instantly deflated. Sure, Natsu and Happy were great. But this was not the plan. Even Rhodes looked like someone had flipped the script on him. Then he caught Myra's sly grin. Ah. He got it now. Rhodes coughed lightly and said. That does make sense. But Natsu's been pushing himself hard all month. He deserves a break. Besides, teaming up with him is exhausting. Myra tilted her head, considering it. Then what about Gray? You two have worked well together before. He's solid in both melee and long range. Rhodes shot her a look that said, haven't you teased him enough? Elzik's about to cry. She returned a smile and subtly held up one finger. Just one more. Gray's been on a mission with Luke for over 10 days now. Rhodes sighed dramatically. What a shame. Then let's find someone else with long-range magic. Myra mused aloud before finally relenting. How about Biska? She hasn't taken a job in a week. Maybe she's feeling the pressure of rent coming up. Yes. Elzik's face practically lit up like a fireworks festival. Makarov watched the whole back and forth unfold with a slightly puzzled expression. When had Myra started recommending team-ups and thinking strategically? Chapter 136, Becoming a Birdman. Of course, the script had already been agreed upon in advance. After all, Rhodes had promised to team up with Elfman when a good opportunity came up. But when he suddenly needed to help Elzik, he made sure to let Myra know. Myra, wanting to help the master avoid more headaches, agreed to play along. And besides, it was a perfect chance to enjoy some juicy gossip. When it came time to deliver their lines. However, Myra found Elzik's reactions unexpectedly entertaining. So she decided to improvise a little. As for Rhodes, since the outcome wouldn't be affected either way, he happily played along. Whether Biska would agree or not wasn't much of a concern. Rhodes had already looked into it ahead of time. Well, Myra had done most of the investigating, and he'd just listened in here and there. According to what a few of the other girls said, Biska definitely cared about Elzik. The odds were in their favor. Though, one moment during that investigation nearly gave Rhodes a heart attack. It was when I asked Ursa. Does Biska care about anyone in particular? Ursa thought about it seriously for nearly a minute and replied, yes. Rhodes. Rhodes nearly dropped dead on the spot. Could she not say that out loud in front of Myra? Thankfully, Ursa added. And Ritas. Myra, half amused by Rhodes' panic, asked Ursa why. Because Biska likes animals. She really likes the poro, wolves, and birds Rhodes summons. And she enjoys the animals Ritas paints. Ah. We weren't asking about that kind of caring, Myra muttered, realizing Ursa might be a bit tone-deaf in matters of the heart. Loki said Biska's room looks like a zoo, right? Yeah, she's got all kinds of cute creatures in there. They ended up chatting quite happily about Biska's animal-themed room, while Rhodes tried to recover from that emotional whiplash. It also opened his eyes to how flexible the dormitory rules were for the girls. Levi turned hers into a personal library. Loki. Let's not even talk about that one. Ursa connected 5 rooms together. And Biska? She's raising large animals in hers. Rhodes couldn't imagine any landlord in his past life ever allowing that. Snapping out of his thoughts, he saw Myra waving toward the tavern. Biska. Can you come over for a second? The beautiful woman with long green hair pointed at herself to confirm. Myra nodded, and Biska uncrossed her legs, stood up smoothly, and walked over to the counter. Rhodes nudged Elzik with his elbow. Fix your posture, buddy. Elzik straightened up instantly, trying his best not to gawk as Biska approached. Her eyes quickly scanned the faces at the counter. Pausing briefly on Makarov and Rhodes, then lingering a second longer on Elzik before she quickly looked away, brushing her hair behind her ear in a flustered motion. What is it, Myra? She asked. Well, Rhodes and Elzik are teaming up for a mission, and they wanted to ask if you'd like to join them. Myra said sweetly, carefully omitting who had actually made the invitation. I think your magic styles complement each other well. What do you think, Biska? Since you say so. Biska started, clearly curious. She really wanted to know who asked her. Let's see, it probably wasn't Rhodes. If he messed up, Myra would kill him. Correction. Both of them would kill him. So, the person who wanted her to join must be. Biska's eyes flicked toward Elzik. The second they made eye contact, Both of them looked away in embarrassment. I'll join. Though she was clearly shy too, Visca was far more decisive than Alzik. So decisive, in fact, that she didn't even ask what the mission was about. Myra and Rhodes exchanged glances and shared the same teasing, knowing smile. Rhodes nudged Alzik again, signaling that it was time to explain the mission. But all Alzik managed to stammer out was, welcome. Glad to have you. Visca blinked, unsure how to respond. Thanks? Myra had to suppress her laughter as she stepped in to explain the actual mission. After listening, Visca nodded. No problem. When are we heading out? This time, Rhodes didn't leave it up to Alzik. We'll head out around 8 tomorrow morning, should arrive at the site by noon. After booking an inn, we'll meet the client, scout the terrain and check on the enemy's layout. Depending on what we find, we'll either strike at night or wait for an early morning ambush. That's the general plan. Does that work for you both? No problem, said Visca with a firm nod. Same here, Alzik echoed. Then it's settled. Let's all prep today and meet at the guild entrance tomorrow morning. Visca offered quick goodbyes to Master Makarov and Myra before heading out. She had some things to take care of back in her dorm. As Alzik turned to leave too, Rhodes called after him. Wait. Did you even pay for Visca's drink? Alzik froze in place like he'd been hit by a stun spell. Myra chuckled. I already paid. Alzik visibly relaxed. Only to tense up again as he opened his mouth. But. He went still again. Never mind. Makarov sighed. You too. Let's get serious. Rhodes shifted the tone. Alzik, should I pretend to get sick tomorrow so the two of you can go alone? Rhodes. Alzik looked deeply touched. That's a true bro. Even if he teased him now and then. Don't joke around. Makarov cut in. Since you've accepted the mission, you're both responsible for seeing it through. And Alzik, it's about time you get it together, right? Yes, sir. Alzik nodded earnestly. He still had to make up for his recent mistakes, and this was his chance to prove himself. I'll give it my all. He added. Though. Maybe next time, Rhodes can get sick. Rhodes smiled. Even though the target was just an ordinary bandit gang, he wouldn't take them lightly. He'd prepare thoroughly. Just as if they were facing a dark guild. Makarov wanted to say that was a bit excessive, but then again, better safe than sorry. Speaking of preparations, something else weighed on Rhodes' mind. Master, do you know how to learn flight quickly? Like, flying like a bird? Makarov raised an eyebrow. Shouldn't you be asking Happy? Or Myra? I did. Rhodes said, shaking his head. But it's different. Their wings are on their backs. I'm working with something else. After taking over the raptor, Rhodes transformed into a sort of birdman hybrid. Not like Zyandrican from League of Legends. Feathers sprouted from his arms, forming wings. Unlike the Krug's earthen magic, which came instinctively and allowed him to burrow underground, flight was more of a physical skill. There was no magic shortcut. He had to flap his wings the old-fashioned way and learn to fly through sheer effort. In comparison, tossing feathers as projectiles was easy. Hitting targets accurately was the only challenge. Chapter 137, If She. He definitely would. On this late autumn morning, the warmth from the bright sunshine was quickly swept away by the chilly wind. High above, wisps of cirrus clouds remained unmoved by the breeze that danced along the streets below. Only the golden leaves clinging to the trees on either side fluttered gently through the air, carried briefly on the wind's path before drifting to the ground. As a proper wingman, Rhodes didn't rush ahead. Instead, he thoughtfully timed his arrival so he wouldn't interrupt too early. He wanted to give the two of them, Alzik and Visca, a bit of space to warm up to each other. But when he arrived at the guild's entrance, they were already there, standing over a meter apart. Visca was leaning slightly on her rifle, idly adjusting its angle on the ground. Alzik kept one hand near the holster at his waist, occasionally scratching his cheek with his index finger. They each stole glances at the other from time to time, only to quickly avert their eyes whenever they were caught. Rhodes wasn't sure where Alzik had picked up all these stealth and observation tricks, but he was using them like a pro. If awkwardly. There they stood, side by side at the guild's entrance, like a pair of statues. One could be labeled oblivious. And the other. Flustered. Rhodes sighed and stepped forward, breaking the tension with a cheerful voice. Sorry I'm late. And no. They both said at the same time, then immediately fell silent again, eyes meeting for a second before darting away in embarrassment. Rhodes looked at them helplessly. Thankfully, Visca spoke up first. We just got here early. You're right on time. Alzik nodded quickly. Why yeah. Rhodes had indeed arrived right on time. Any later, and he would have lost his nerve and turned around. Shall we get going? He asked, waving back toward the guild building. Once he got a few waves in response, he motioned for the group to move out. Still walking awkwardly apart, Biska and Alzik followed Rhodes, keeping over a meter of distance between them like a pair of guardians flanking a royal procession. This pace was unbearable. The awkwardness was almost tangible. Thinking for a moment, Rhodes casually asked, "Let's take a carriage. What kind do you guys usually rent?" "A standard 2-horse carriage." Biska replied. "I really like horses. Honestly, if I could, I'd rather just ride one." Rhodes glanced at her outfit. A rugged, Western-style look that perfectly matched Alzik's usual aesthetic. Unfortunately, Alzik said nothing. Rhodes tried to help him along. "You're usually pretty quiet at the tavern, Biska, but I didn't know you were so cool. No wonder you get along so well with Rizza." Biska smiled sheepishly. "It's not really that. I actually knew Rizza before I joined the guild." She went on to talk about how she'd met Rizza and eventually became a fairy tale wizard. Meanwhile, Alzik stood there listening, and an odd sense of pride bubbled up in him. "Hey. I already knew this story." Rhodes didn't. Rhodes glanced sideways at him. "This guy is hopeless. Ask her something. Who cares if you already know? It's completely different when you show her you're interested and ask her yourself. Right now, it just looks like you don't care." Rhodes was mentally exhausted. He nodded along to Biska's story and grinned. "You actually pretended to be a fairy tale wizard and didn't get sliced in half by Rizza? That's a miracle." Biska offered a sheepish smile. "I didn't really understand what a guild meant back then. I just knew that fairy tale was famous and super impressive." She glanced aside slightly, a bit embarrassed. "Since I came from the Western continent and didn't have any real skills to make a living, I kind of pretended to be a fairy tale wizard so I could get food and shelter." Thinking back on it, she chuckled awkwardly. "Looking at it now, I feel like I really dragged the guild's name through the mud." Rhodes nearly choked. No. Dragged through the mud? If all she did was mooch some food, collect a few protection fees, and play at being a local bully. Well, that was basically beginner-level fairy tale behavior. His gaze shifted to the guy next to him, who was just smiling silently like a background prop. "Fine. Time to be the reliable wingman again. What about you, Alzik?" Rhodes asked with a nudge. "Huh? Oh. Yeah, I'm also from the Western continent, just like Biska," Alzik said. Rhodes gave a small sigh of relief. At least he knows to mention Biska when he talks now. Progress. After sharing his brief story, Alzik offered a suggestion. "Actually, to get to Sunflower Village, we could take the train to Unibasa first, then switch to a carriage. That'd save us some time, right?" Rhodes paused, expression flat. "Yeah, sure. But you're both carrying massive guns. Riding the train might give the other passengers a heart attack." Biska was about to explain that she could use requip magic to make her sniper rifle vanish anytime. She just liked the way it looked when she held it. But since she was clearly a little more decisive than Alzik, she simply nodded and said, "That's true. A carriage might be more convenient after all." Alzik, immediately taking her lead, agreed. "Why yeah, definitely. Carriage it is." Rhodes just stared at the two of them. "I'm done. Next time, whoever wants to play matchmaker can do it themselves. I don't care how awkward the couple is or how much it costs. I'm out." The three of them went to rent a carriage. As soon as they boarded, Rhodes climbed in first and very deliberately placed his bag on the seat beside him, effectively blocking Alzik from sitting next to him. Call it petty. Call it underhanded. Rhodes called it seat-claiming mastery, a skill honed from years of fighting for spots in college lecture halls. And today, it finally paid off. Alzik, flustered, ended up sitting next to Biska, stiff as a board and unsure of where to place his hands. Biska wasn't faring much better. She kept her posture composed, but there was a noticeable gap between them. One that seemed to echo with awkward silence. Rhodes, meanwhile, had taken his seat with the ease of someone enjoying a good show. He leaned against the window frame with a faint smile, casually observing the tension brewing beside him. And, as expected. Sorry." Alzik blurted out as the carriage shifted, instinctively scooting back to his original seat like a student caught whispering during a lecture. He sat up straight, posture rigid and formal. "No, it's fine." Biska tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, trying to convince herself that this was perfectly normal and nothing to overthink. But of course, the moment the carriage began to move, the two of them, thrown slightly off balance, bumped shoulders. A slight touch, but enough to turn both their faces crimson. Rhodes chuckled inwardly. It's funny how this kind of thing wouldn't bother anyone else. Bumping into a stranger or even a friend is usually nothing. But when two people have a little spark going, even the smallest contact sets off fireworks. He found it genuinely entertaining. If only Myra were here to see this, he thought. She'd be laughing with me. It was exactly 8:11 a.m., just 11 minutes since he'd left the guild. And he already missed her. Back at the guild, things had quieted down after the morning rush. Myra wiped down the counter one last time and set the rag aside, taking a moment to rest. I wonder how Alzik and Biska are getting along. She mused aloud, resting her chin in her palm. Loki, who was nearby, gave a sly grin. Sister Myra, are you really wondering about Alzik and Biska, or a certain someone who went with them? Don't talk nonsense, Myra said, tossing the rag at her, though her cheeks held a faint blush. Of course I'm talking about Alzik and Biska. I imagine their reactions on the road must be pretty funny. Yeah, those two do seem like a good match. Loki agreed, catching the rag with a playful smirk. It looked clean enough, so she resumed wiping the nearby table. Myra gazed thoughtfully at the guild entrance, a soft smile tugging at her lips. Chapter 138, Me? Fairy Strategist? Sunflower Village was nestled northeast of Magnolia, not far from the rugged terrain of Croba Canyon, close to the border of the Kingdom of Fiore. However, the client for this mission wasn't the village chief of Sunflower itself, even though it was the closest settlement to the bandits' hideout. Instead, the commission had been jointly filed by several surrounding villages and towns. A single village simply couldn't satisfy the plundering appetite of a bandit gang this large. Over time, other nearby communities and passing merchants had become targets as well. Worn down and desperate, the villagers had pooled their resources together, hoping that a group of professional wizards could finally bring them peace. In theory, this should have been a job for the local city guard. Or even the regional military stationed along the border. But Fiore was a permanently neutral nation. Whether it was the result of prolonged peace or the dominance of magic in society, conventional troops weren't exactly the country's strong suit. They were good enough for keeping order in the towns. But storming a mountain to face a well-entrenched group of bandits? That was asking a bit too much. In the end, the people turned to the guilds. Specifically, the Wizards of Fairy Tale. After covering the travel expenses, the trio of wizards arrived in town and quickly found a nearby inn. The innkeeper said there are only 2 rooms left. Rhodes said casually. Not much of a choice. I'll take one room. You two can share the other, yeah? Alzik and Biska immediately flushed a bright red, their expressions nearly matching the maple leaves in late autumn. Share a room? The 2 of us. In one room? They stammered in unison, practically steaming with embarrassment. They had warmed up to each other a lot during the trip, sure. But this was clearly pushing their comfort zone a little too fast. Ha 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 ha. Rhodes laughed until his shoulders shook. It took a few beats before the 2 caught up to reality. Logically, it should be Rhodes and Alzik bunking together, right? Hey, Rhodes. Don't just say something like that out of nowhere. Biska puffed up angrily, then immediately shrank back into a shy blush. Why yeah, that was too much. Alzik added weakly, scratching the back of his head. Ha, sorry. Rhodes coughed and waved his hand to calm them down. Alright, let's just drop our bags and head out. Once their luggage was stored, the trio left the inn and made their way toward the client. The moment they stepped outside, Rhodes's expression shifted, his usual playfulness replaced by calm precision. Well, you might have seen my magic before, he said. It's best to give a quick rundown now. Just to keep us all on the same page. He raised a hand and began to explain in detail. First, my summoning magic. I can call forth various wild monsters, each with their own unique specialties. Some are great for scouting or carrying supplies, others are suited for combat or defense. Some even have niche uses like detection or poisoning. He then gestured toward himself. Next is takeover magic. So far, I've got a few forms I can switch between. One grants me armored defense, another boosts agility or magic power. Right now, I'm also working on a form that lets me fly. In summary, leave reconnaissance, terrain scouting, fallback planning, and general support to me. I'll keep you both covered. Biska and Alzik blinked. Even though they'd heard bits and pieces about Rhodes's abilities from the guild, they hadn't realized just how extensive his magic repertoire really was. Recon, combat, utility, crowd control. He had it all. And to think, not that long ago, he was just some guy who didn't even know basic spells. 4 months, and you've already come this far? Alzik was stunned by the growth he was witnessing. Don't just stand there. It's your turn. Rhodes reminded him. Oh, right. Alzik snapped out of it, drew the pistol from his waist, and spun it with a fluid, practiced motion. His signature gun dance lighting up with flair. I specialize in gun magic. With this pistol, I can fire off a variety of rounds. Tranquilizers, flashbangs, smoke screens, electric shots, explosive rounds, and even whirlwind blasts. Urban skirmishes and rough terrain are my ideal battlefield. As soon as he picked up his weapon, Elzik transformed. Gone was the shy, awkward man from earlier. Speaking about magic, he radiated confidence and control, and for the first time, that charisma was unmistakable. Visca was clearly captivated. Visca? Rhodes prompted after giving her a moment to admire. Ah. Yes. She stepped forward smoothly, hoisting her sniper rifle over her shoulder with a confident smile. I use requip magic, just like Ursa. If hers is called the knight, then mine could be the gunner. My combat style is centered around swapping out guns tailored for different situations. I prefer to engage enemies from long distances, picking them off before they ever see me. Rhodes nodded in understanding. Both Elzik and Visca used gun-based magic, but in distinct ways. Elzik focused on swapping out ammunition for versatility, while Visca used requip to switch weapons entirely, prioritizing precision and range. This mission really was a perfect match for the two of them. Myra and I nailed this pairing. The three headed out to meet with a client. Unfortunately, the client could offer little beyond basic intel. Rhodes pressed for details but only managed to confirm the general direction of the bandit hideout, and a vague warning that the bandits might have access to some kind of magic tools or equipment. The rest, we'll have to scout ourselves. Rhodes concluded. Elzik stepped forward. I can assist with covert recon. Visca nodded. I'm skilled at camouflage and stealth too. Hold on. Let's find their base first. Once we've located it, we'll decide on our next move. Rhodes instructed. He opened his backpack, pulled out a rolled map, a quill, and some parchment. Connecting to the vision of his summoned scuttle crabs and merc wolves, he began recording the surrounding terrain in real time. He also marked hazards, like poisonous plants and insects, as well as hidden footpaths that could be useful for maneuvering later. After a few thoughtful seconds, he dug deeper into his bag and pulled out 2 slim books, handing one each to Elzik and Visca. Here. Just in case. The two blinked. He brought magic books? So well prepared. Visca and Elzik watched as Rhodes meticulously marked ambush points on the map, jotting down lines of detailed terrain information and possible tactical uses for each location. Visca couldn't help but exclaim. You're just like the fairy strategist. Elzik tilted his head. Fairy strategist? What's that? Visca smiled as she recalled the story. It's the title given to our first guild master, Mavis Vermilion. She was a genius tactician who could analyze intelligence, devise brilliant strategies, and lead her companions to victory again and again. I heard Fairy Tale survived many wars thanks to her planning, which is why everyone called her the fairy strategist. Elzik's eyes widened in awe. That sounds exactly like what Rhodes is doing right now. I think I even heard Gray complain once that Rhodes whipped out a planning book that was a whole foot thick. And just reading it gave him a headache. Visca chuckled. That's why I said Rhodes feels like the modern-day fairy strategist. Rhodes let out a groan. Seriously? That guy Gray is out here spreading rumors again? He looked exasperated but not too surprised. For some reason, he was always the target of exaggerated tales around the guild. But come on. Rhodes continued, waving his hand dismissively. Master Mavis could store entire battlefields in her mind. She'd memorize enemy movements, analyze their magic types, predict their formations, and simulate all possible scenarios. After all that, she'd still manage to find the optimal strategy to win. Me? I just scribble on maps, draft a couple of basic plans, and deal with bandits who couldn't pass a spelling test. There's no comparison. He remembered hearing about Master Mavis from Levy. It left a strong impression on him. And an even stronger sense of inadequacy. The largest battle he had ever commanded was a 5 versus 5 team fight, and maybe that one large-scale online game match he once played. Though if anything, that was more chaos than strategy. He couldn't hold a candle to the first guild master. Chapter 139, The Best Partners. Elzik and Visca couldn't quite imagine how the first guild master commanded battles, but just seeing the strategic points that Rhodes marked after organizing the intel was already immensely helpful. Especially for Visca. As a sniper, being able to quickly identify a solid vantage point was half the battle won. And Rhodes had casually sent out a few of his summon monsters, and in no time at all, had mapped out a series of ideal sniping spots and concealed perches. Got it. Rhodes suddenly called out as one of his merc wolves returned to the summoner's rift on its own. He immediately summoned the wolf again and crouched down to speak to it. Did you find people, or their hideout? He asked, holding out his left hand for people and his right for base. The merc wolf paused, then reached out a paw and tapped his right hand, followed by his left. Rhodes thought for a second. So you found the base first? And there were people inside it? The merc wolf nodded firmly. Not bad. Rhodes muttered. You're thorough. Asking which hill it was exactly would have been pushing it. The wolf couldn't give detailed answers. He briefly considered whether he could teach it to write. Recalling the other monsters scouting the area, he quickly dismissed them, summoned 2 scuttle crabs, and sent them off with the merc wolf to scout ahead. "Are we not going with them?" Elzek asked. Rhodes tapped the side of his head. "We are. I can link up with the crab's vision and guide us forward. You two cover the flanks and rear. Sound good?" Elzek nodded. "Got it." Biska raised her sniper rifle with a confident smirk. "That's my specialty." With 2 expert marksmen on guard duty, Rhodes felt completely at ease. Compared to Natsu's unpredictable instincts, Gray's lightning-fast eyes magic, this kind of methodical teamwork was refreshing. Everyone in Fairy Tail seemed to have their own unique niche. Even if it wasn't always about brute strength, each of them had honed something they could claim as their own. Fairy Tail really was one of the top guilds in Fiore. That made Rhodes think. What was his niche? If someone asked, "All your teammates are top tier in something. What's your specialty?" He couldn't exactly answer. "My wife is the most beautiful in the country." Okay, it was inappropriate. But still. Kind of satisfying to imagine. Before they left Magnolia, Myra had mentioned the terrain was rough. Now that they were here, Rhodes could confirm. It wasn't exactly a sheer cliff, but it was far from an easy hike. Fortunately, the 3 of them weren't ordinary people. Even without ropes or climbing gear, they always found a way. Rhodes took the lead, scouting the trail ahead and clearing the path. Whenever they came across particularly difficult sections, he would use partial takeover magic, morphing his arm into a wolf's claw or a krug's gauntlet, to carve small footholds for the others behind him. He even tested both forms to see which was more efficient for digging through dirt and stone. Meanwhile, Elzek and Biska followed a little behind, occasionally helping each other along as they navigated narrow ledges and unstable ground. The more Biska walked, the more grateful she felt to be teamed up with Rhodes. He was attentive to even the smallest details, taking care of everything from climbing routes to battlefield preparation. Elzek, on the other hand, was thrilled for another reason. Climbing in close proximity meant there were moments where he and Biska naturally had to reach for each other's hands, studying one another across steep slopes. Rhodes made sure to keep just far enough ahead to give them space. Hiking, he thought, was one of the best ways to bring people closer together. The trio quickly scaled the hillside, carefully navigating the narrow ridge between 2 peaks. Just ahead lay the bandits' hideout. "Something's happening," Biska muttered, pressing her eye to her sniper scope. Rhodes and Elzek immediately halted and positioned themselves to guard her flanks. Elzek followed her gaze. "That's a carriage? Is it a merchant caravan?" Rhodes squinted toward the far-off slope. The mountain trees were a golden blur of yellow and green, and a faint road wound its way at the foot of the opposite peak. It wasn't the path they had taken. This road stretched around the other side. But from this distance, even spotting the carriage was a challenge. "It's a robbery," Biska said grimly. "The bandits are ambushing them. I count 10 hostiles. A full-scale bombardment risks hitting civilians. If I use my sniper mode, I can drop 6 in one clean shot, but leave the rest to me," Elzek said, his voice calm and assured. "It's tough to shoot that far with a pistol, but, got a spare sniper rifle?" When it came to combat, Elzek was a different man. Sharp, focused, and steady. Gone was the flustered demeanor he'd shown earlier in the carriage. "Re-equip," Biska called, and with a shimmer of light, a second sniper rifle appeared beside her. Elzek caught it effortlessly, raising the weapon with practiced ease. "Krugs, come forth," Rhodes commanded, summoning several of the hulking, stone-plated beasts. The Krugs crouched low, their sturdy backs forming a makeshift firing platform. "Thanks, Rhodes," Biska said, setting up her rifle atop the solid Krug shell. Elzek did the same on the one beside her, both perfectly steady. "I'll take the 6 on the right," Biska declared, already calibrating her sights. "Then I'll handle the 4 on the left," Elzek replied without hesitation. No more words were needed. They silently counted down together. 3, 2, 1. Sniper art, sharpshooter. A small, emerald-green magic circle shimmered into view at the muzzle of Biska's rifle. With a sharp crack, 6 magic bullets shot out simultaneously, piercing through the air and striking their marks with pinpoint accuracy. Sniper art, lightning barrage. Elzek followed up, his magic taking a slightly different form. He didn't fire in a single volley, but instead let loose 4 consecutive shots in rapid succession. His reloading speed using magic was astonishing. Almost as soon as one round left the barrel, the next was already chambered and fired. Each shot found its target with surgical precision. The 4 bandits were struck one after another, collapsing as golden arcs of electricity crackled across their bodies. Targets down. Elzek and Biska high-fived each other, triumphant. Then, right on cue, both of them turned beet red. "Biska, you You're really amazing with a rifle. You too. Biska replied quickly, flustered. Your magic was so cool. Rhodes, watching the two of them flounder with embarrassment, resisted the urge to toss them each a mint. Because clearly, they needed something to cool off. I'm heading down to check on the caravan owner. At the very least, we should escort him safely out of the danger zone. Rhodes said. Can I trust you two to keep watch here? If more enemies show up. No problem. Elzik replied confidently, patting the back of the crowd beneath him. With these guys here, I'm not worried in the slightest. Biska nodded with a smile. Right? These things are incredible. You called them Krugs, right? They're perfect partners for marksmen like us. After all, what gunner wouldn't love a portable, obedient bunker that could move with you, obey commands, and was tougher than solid stone? Not to mention, the Krugs could use basic earth magic and, if necessary, dig an escape route underground at a moment's notice. The two of them were seriously impressed. And more than a little jealous of Rhodes' summoned companions. They even exchanged glances, half-jokingly wondering if they should just team up with him permanently. Rhodes could hang back and provide support, and they could hug the Krugs every battle. Simple and effective. All right. Stay sharp. Rhodes said, raising his arm. Take over, Merc Wolf. In a flash, he transformed into a sleek, humanoid wolf. Dark-furred and muscular, built for speed and agility. With long strides and nimble reflexes, he leapt down into the woods, dashing toward the scene of the attack. He could have flown there instead, using his raptor form. But honestly, his flying was still about as effective as a domesticated chicken's. A cat with fake wings probably had more lift than he did. So rather than humiliate himself, Rhodes chose the cooler option. And the safer one too. Chapter 140, The Army is Attacking. Two men stood beside the carriage. One was clearly a merchant, and the other his coachman and porter. The merchant, now visibly shaken, had clearly gambled and lost. Though he'd heard rumors of bandits in the area, he'd been too stingy to hire a wizard for protection. That choice had nearly cost him not only his goods, but his life. The coachman looked just as rattled. Getting hacked up by bandits while working for a cheapskate boss? A miserable way to go. Mr. Ban, should we get moving? The coachman asked nervously. Wait. Ban said, eyes flicking toward the tree line. It must have been a wizard who saved us just now. Let's wait for him. Though his hands were trembling, a calculating glint shone in Ban's eyes. A skilled wizard had just taken care of the threat. Wasn't this the perfect chance to snag a free escort? They didn't have to wait long. From deep within the forest, a gray blur raced toward them. A large werewolf dropped from the trees and landed in front of them, yellow-brown eyes gleaming, fangs bared. Ban nearly wet himself. Thankfully, the werewolf spoke. Who are you? That was enough to calm Ban a little. A talking werewolf meant it was likely a wizard using transformation or takeover magic. We're just merchants. Ban stammered. Heading to Unabasu. We were almost ambushed back there. Thank you for saving us. Is there anything we can do to help? Rhodes gave a curt nod. If it's convenient, help me tie these guys up. The coachman moved to assist, but Ban held him back. I noticed you didn't bring any rope. He said, pulling out a coil. 30 meters. Only 600 jewel. Mr. Ban. The coachman blurted out in disbelief. Are you seriously trying to sell rope right now? Even Rhodes stared at him in stunned silence. Who tries to make a sale mid-rescue? Unamused, Rhodes declined. No thanks. He stayed in werewolf form and kicked the discarded weapons away from the fallen bandits before reverting to human form and tying their hands behind their backs. Using the bandits' own belts. If you're fine, then clear out. He said flatly. Don't get in the way. Annoying people like this were always the worst. Too cheap to hire a guard, too much trouble to ignore. Save them, and they'd be ungrateful. Let them fend for themselves, and it'd be a PR nightmare. Better to just shoo them the way now. But Ban wasn't giving up so easily. Mr. Wizard, don't misunderstand. I'm happy to give you the rope. He said cheerfully. You're going to escort these bandits to the city hall anyway, right? Why not come with us? You can use the rope, ride in the carriage, whatever you like. Rhodes didn't need to think hard to see through him. The man just wanted a free bodyguard. Sorry. Rhodes replied bluntly. I've got other business. Don't involve me. We don't mind waiting. Ban offered quickly. And if this guy's persistence was something else. Since logic wasn't working, it was time to speak in duel. While tying a bandit's arms behind his back, Rhodes said, Mr. Ban, standard escort missions usually run from 2,000 to 10,000 jewel. With the amount of goods you're hauling and the risk of bandits in this area, that price would go up. Not to mention. You think it's cheap to hire a wizard like me? And my companions? who can wipe out a dozen enemies in the blink of an eye. That hit Ban where it hurt. Of course he knew high-level wizards weren't easy to come by. That's exactly why he wanted one for free. But faced with a real price, he finally backed down. "Apologies," he muttered. "We'll be on our way." With one bandit group already dealt with, it seemed unlikely another would show up so soon. He could take the risk. The coachman, on the other hand, looked like he wanted to run off on his own. He didn't know market prices, but even he knew the profits on this wagon load were high enough to afford 10 mages. "Next time," the coachman muttered under his breath. "I'm working for someone with a little more fear in their bones." Rhodes tied up the 10 bandits one by one, then picked out the most cowardly-looking among them and dragged him a short distance away. After splashing some cold water on the man's face, he jolted awake. "Who are you? Let me go, or our boss will." A merc wolf bared its fangs and crept closer, causing the bandit to immediately shut his mouth in terror. "Tell me how many of you there are. Are there any wizards in your group? What about hidden paths, traps, escape tunnels? Anything unusual on the mountain?" "Why would I tell you that?" the bandit barked. "If you don't," Rhodes said calmly, "I'll let the wolves have you. They haven't had lunch yet." The two-headed merc wolf licked its lips and leaned in, hot breath wafting over the man's face as drool began to drip from its mouth. I'll talk. I'll tell you everything. Don't even think about lying," Rhodes warned, voice steely. "I'll be waking the others up to verify your story. If I catch even one lie, you're losing a hand." Rhodes wasn't exactly trained in interrogation, but he remembered something about the prisoner's dilemma from somewhere. Whether it applied here or not, it seemed to work. Terrified of being a merc wolf's midday snack, the bandit spilled everything. Details about their numbers, the layout of the camp, traps in the area, and the boss's magic abilities. After he got what he needed, Rhodes knocked the man out and moved on to another captive, repeating the process several times. Once the answers lined up, he returned to regroup with Alzik and Biska. Both of them were standing alert with their rifles drawn. One watched the forest in Rhodes' direction, the other scanned the surrounding area. "Solid as ever. How'd it go?" Alzik asked, noticing the look on Rhodes' face. "The numbers match what we already knew," Rhodes said. "Their leader uses powerful destructive magic, and there are traps laid throughout the terrain." He paused. Biska tensed. "What's wrong?" "One of the scuttle crabs triggered a pitfall." "Nothing serious. It's still alive. But they might have been alerted. We'll need to act fast before they try to scatter." "I'm ready," Alzik said with a nod. Then he glanced at Rhodes, concerned. "How's your magic holding up?" Between summoning and takeover magic, Rhodes had used quite a bit of energy today. He was still supporting multiple summons, Krugs, merc wolves, raptors, and scuttle crabs. "I'm good for another 20 minutes," Rhodes said. "Worst case, I'll unsummon a few to conserve magic. Hopefully, I won't even need to join the fight." "You've already done more than enough," Alzik said. Biska agreed. "It's our turn to pull the trigger." Still, Rhodes wanted to provide one final layer of support before things kicked off. He dispatched a Krug to accompany Biska to a sniper perch and then brought 2 more with him as he followed Alzik through a path that bypassed the traps they'd learned about. The bandits' hideout wasn't particularly large. A wooden lodge stood in the center, surrounded by scattered thatched huts. A basic wooden fence lined the perimeter, and 2 crude arrow towers guarded the entrance. Pop. Pop. Before they could raise the alarm, the dozing sentry at the gate and the lookout in the tower dropped with clean headshots. Biska's opening strike. Rhodes circled around toward the rear, ready to cut off any escaping enemies. Meanwhile, Alzik approached the front, loaded a high-explosive round into his pistol, and fired. Boom. The blast blew the gates wide open. Inside, chaos erupted. Enemy attack. "Damn it, who are these people?" "Boss. We're under siege." Chapter 141, What Did You Think of? The bandits charging with swords were quickly taken down by Alzik, who rained down a barrage of specialized magic bullets before they could even get close. It may have looked like an ordinary pistol, but in Alzik's hands, infused with his bullet magic, it fired with the ferocity and precision of a magical machine gun. When archers and gun-wielding bandits tried to line up a shot, Alzik had already ducked behind a Krug summoned by Rhodes. Arrows clinked harmlessly off its tough carapace, and the bandits' normal firearms barely made a scratch. Before they could even line up a second volley, Biska had already picked off their marksmen one by one from a distance with flawless aim. "Nice shooting, Biska," Alzik called out, even though she was too far away to hear him. Then he rolled out from behind cover, swiftly taking down any melee attackers who tried to charge while the gunfire was distracted. The Krug moved when ordered, stopped when told, and stood firm as a rock. Most importantly, it followed Rhodes' core command: if Alzik was injured, Grab him and retreat underground. A wizard? There's a sniper. On that mountain. At this distance? Are you kidding? She's too strong. What the heck is that moving stone creature? The bandits had never encountered opponents like this before. One moment they were standing watch, and the next their comrades were collapsing in the blink of an eye. They had the advantage in numbers. Until a single volley dropped a dozen of them. And just when they thought they had suppressed the threat, another round of gunmen was struck down by an unseen sniper. Attempting a counterattack only led to more casualties. Another dozen fell before even reaching the enemy lines. 2 elite wizards and a summoned monster they couldn't even identify. The bandits were starting to lose heart. Just then, a burly man stormed out of the central wooden lodge with a staff in hand and kicked a fleeing bandit aside. Cowards. It's just a couple of wizards. Fight back. The bandit boss roared. I'll handle the monster. You lot take down that guy. Boss, wait. They have. Bang. The bandit leader hit the ground hard, his staff clattering from his hands. The stunned lackey finished his sentence blankly. They have a sniper. The rest of the bandits immediately dropped their weapons and surrendered. Rhodes, who had been circling to cut off escape routes, arrived just in time to see the aftermath. Elzek had his gun drawn as he watched the defeated bandits begin tying each other up voluntarily. That was fast. Rhodes' sudden appearance startled the captives. The sight of a third powerful mage joining the fray made them tremble. Clearly, this was no ordinary trio. I'll confess. There was another squad. 10 of us. Sent down the mountain to ambush travelers. Why yeah. The ambush point is. They've already been taken out. Elzek interrupted. Is there anyone else? The bandits wilted. Some looked both bitter and amazed. They had been taken down systematically. What were these people? Soldiers? Wizards? Demons? After a few moments, Biska arrived, sniper still in hand, surveying the camp. The bandits were all bound and seated. Rhodes was checking the ropes, making sure none of them were trying anything sneaky. The defeated men looked up at him in despair. Do you really think we try anything after all this? You're being too cautious. Biska blinked in confusion. Why do they all look so crushed? Maybe they've completely lost the will to fight. Elzek suggested. Then, hesitantly, he turned to her. That last shot. It was incredible. Thank you. Biska stammered, clearly flustered by the compliment. Your quick reload and rapid-fire shots were amazing too. Elzek turned beet red. Ah. It's nothing. Just years of training, you know? The two of them fell silent, awkwardly glancing in opposite directions. Rhodes watched the exchange with a small sigh. Only someone who really understands the craft can give praise like that. He'd witnessed both their sharpshooting performances up close. And all he could manage was a simple, that was awesome. But it didn't really matter. Rhodes might not have the most poetic vocabulary, but he knew how to complement magic and combat training when it counted. He clapped his hands. All right, while there's still daylight, let's escort the ones who can walk back down the mountain. Hopefully we'll make it back to town before dark. When Elzek and Biska were fighting earlier, aside from the explosion that blew open the gate, the rest of their magic bullets were deliberately non-lethal. The bullets delivered effects like full-body paralysis or instant unconsciousness. Painful, yes. But not deadly. Some of the bandits were unfortunately injured due to their own recklessness or poor timing, but no one had suffered any serious wounds. There were still quite a few incapacitated bandits who couldn't walk, so they were left restrained in the base. The local town guard would be notified to return and collect them the next morning. Just to be safe, Rhodes had Elzek give each of them one more tranquilizer round for good measure. The bandits who hadn't been shot yet were terrified, thinking this was some sort of execution. They began frantically confessing every secret they could think of. There wasn't much useful intel among the babbling. Though they did learn that the base held some leftover stolen goods and food the bandits hadn't had time to spend or eat. Rhodes and the others didn't touch any of it. Mages from official guilds like Fairy Tail were bound by certain rules. Accepting rewards outside of official commissions was strictly prohibited. Any valuables or stolen items found during a mission like this were turned over to the client or local authorities. The goods would then be returned to the victims whenever possible, and the food and money redistributed to nearby towns as compensation. This policy also applied to treasure hunting missions. If there wasn't a prior agreement stating how to split the rewards, any treasure discovered belonged to the client, not the wizard. Fairy Tail wizards might have a reputation for being wild and rowdy, but they were unusually strict about these kinds of rules. Far more than most other guilds. As they made their way back down the mountain, Rhodes dismantled the traps left along the paths. He didn't want the town guard to accidentally stumble into one and leave a bad review on the mission report. By the time they turned over the captured bandits, the sun had already dipped below the horizon. The town guards decided they'd return to the mountain in the morning to collect the rest of the captives. Still, since the bandit leader had already been apprehended, they declared the mission complete on the spot. Rhodes, Elzik, and Biska successfully received their reward, along with a heap of gratitude and praise, before heading back to the inn to finally rest. After a long day, Rhodes hit the shower first. When he came out, towel over his shoulders, Elzik was sitting at the edge of the bed, carefully cleaning his pistol. "Your turn." "Got it." Elzik put the gun down, then looked up, his voice sincere. "Thanks a lot, Rhodes." "Really? For the mission, or for helping you invite Biska to join the team?" Elzik's ears turned red the moment he heard her name. Both. Definitely both." Rhodes dragged out the sound teasingly. Seeing Elzik's expression tense like a deer caught in the headlights, he smirked. "Hey, don't tell me you were actually hoping to share a room with Biska tonight?" "No. Of course not." Elzik nearly short-circuited. "I mean, it's our first mission together. I wouldn't even dream of something that serious." He paused, then scrambled to change the subject. "Wait. When you went to the capital with Myra, did you two stay in the same room?" Rhodes answered with complete composure. "Yep." "What?" Elzik's eyes went wide, and his mind raced in panic. "Why you mean? You guys already?" "We stayed in a suite." Rhodes clarified with a sly grin. "Different rooms." He leaned in with a mischievous glint in his eye. "Why? What were you imagining? Planning to room with Biska next time?" "Nothing." Elzik turned bright red, practically steam rising from his head. Chapter 142, Rhodes, when are you going out again? On the way back, Rhodes and his team boarded a train this time. Rhodes didn't need to struggle for a seat. Elzik mustered up the courage to sit in the same row as Biska. However, there was still a gap between them. One staring out the window at the passing scenery, the other looking down awkwardly at the aisle. Rhodes pulled out a deck of cards to break the tension. From now on, he decided to let Elzik handle his love life on his own. It felt as if the relationship between these two could burst into passionate love at any moment, perhaps progressing even faster than his own. He felt a pang of envy. When he got back, Rhodes planned to train for a few more days before choosing a suitable mission to tackle alongside Delphman. The journey was peaceful, though the weather grew gloomy as they neared Magnolia. Biska glanced outside and murmured curiously. "Who's that?" Rhodes and Elzik quickly turned their heads. Standing alone on a small hill just outside town was a cloaked figure, several staffs secured on his back. "That must be Mistogan, right?" Rhodes guessed. "I caught a glimpse of him a few days ago, but unfortunately didn't get to see his face." "So that's Mistogan," Elzik murmured. "He really covers himself up a lot, doesn't he?" This was the first time he and Biska had clearly seen Mistogan, despite being hypnotized by him several times before. If they hadn't noticed him now, they probably wouldn't recognize him even if he walked past them in the street. Rhodes leaned in mischievously. "Hey, want to take this chance to shoot him a few times?" Biska blinked in surprise. "Why?" "Just annoyed, that's all. Don't you remember hitting your head after being hypnotized?" Rhodes recalled his own embarrassing fall from Mistogan's spell. Wait a second, hadn't he fallen alongside Myra back then? At the time, he'd been too panicked to notice. Could it be Mistogan wasn't actually a bad guy? No, that wasn't right. Rude behavior was still rude. Actually, that's not a bad idea. Elzik considered, tempted. Wouldn't it be fair to hit him with an anesthetic bullet or something and leave him sleeping out there as revenge? But not now. Biska objected gently. He seems to be doing something important. Is that some kind of special training? At that moment, Mistogan drove 5 staffs deep into the ground. A swirling vortex was forming in the clouds above, as if preparing to tear open the sky itself. Mistogan's cloak whipped in the gusting wind as he firmly grasped the central staff with both hands. Layer after layer of glowing magic circles rose up around him, surging skyward into the clouds. Suddenly, the hole in the sky rapidly shrank, and the swirling vortex reversed direction, spinning smaller and smaller until it vanished completely. As if nothing had ever happened. Mistogan visibly relaxed, slowly retrieving each staff. As he walked away, his back seemed weary and somewhat strained. Rhodes stared in amazement. What kind of magic could possibly affect the clouds and weather like that? Maybe the Jupiter cannon could disperse a small cloud. Biska mused. Is this what one of our guild's strongest wizards can do? Just how powerful is he? I'm not sure. Elzik admitted thoughtfully. But that didn't look like training. We should ask Master about it. Rhodes suggested. He remembered Myra mentioning that Mistogan had been spotted around Magnolia lately. Maybe he'd been carrying out a secret mission, which explained why he'd been hanging around nearby. Rhodes glanced thoughtfully at the gloomy sky overhead. Could Mistogan's secret mission really have been to create artificial rain? Miss Hogan has his own mission, don't worry about him. Makarov quickly changed the subject, clearly unwilling to elaborate further. Hearing this, the trio understood it must be a highly confidential mission. Rhodes reported the details of their mission to Master Makarov and Myra, praising Alzik and Biska's outstanding marksmanship and battle prowess. In turn, Alzik and Biska complimented Rhodes' meticulous preparations and strategic coordination during the mission. Rhodes' presence had significantly saved them time, prevented many potential complications, and resolved numerous minor issues along the way. Silently, Alzik also acknowledged that Rhodes had helped resolve one particularly big problem. Myra scribbled a few notes into the guild logbook and smiled warmly. All done. Congratulations. She glanced at Rhodes, eyes sparkling with curiosity, eager for some interesting stories from their journey. Master Makarov nodded with approval. You all did very well. While it hadn't been an especially difficult mission, they'd successfully captured the bandits swiftly and efficiently, without causing extra trouble or property damage. Such smooth execution certainly deserved the old master's praise. Oh, by the way, Rhodes suddenly suggested. We haven't eaten lunch yet. How about we have a celebratory meal together? We can eat here in the guild. Alzik stole a quick glance at Biska, stammering slightly. I'm fine with that. Biska also quickly peeked at Alzik and replied shyly. Yeah, sure. Although they'd eaten together yesterday, that was during their mission. Eating together in the guild had a totally different feel to it. Rhodes sighed internally. He had initially planned not to get involved any further. But Myra clearly wanted some juicy gossip. Thus, Rhodes shamelessly betrayed Alzik. Though from his perspective, he was being incredibly supportive. Myra, have you eaten yet? Rhodes asked cheerfully. Want to join us? Myra blinked with surprise, smiling gently. Is that okay? Absolutely. Alzik quickly jumped in, thinking he had deciphered Rhodes' intentions and wanting to repay the favor. Biska seemed to agree silently. One more person would ease their awkwardness. And so, the four friends sat together at a table inside the lively guild hall. The atmosphere wasn't exactly awkward, but it was certainly amusingly peculiar. Rhodes and Myra eagerly awaited any romantic developments between Alzik and Biska. Meanwhile, Alzik and Biska thought they were watching the budding relationship between Rhodes and Myra. While eating, the group shared amusing stories from their mission the day before. The guild's notorious gossip lovers eagerly listened in, enjoying every juicy detail. By lunchtime, everyone in the guild had happily consumed enough gossip to fill them up, leaving some feeling humorously overstuffed. This might have been a bad idea. Rhodes lamented afterward. I thought bringing you to enjoy the show up close would be fun, but it ended up so awkward. Myra giggled softly. Don't you think awkward situations can be entertaining, too? Rhodes playfully groaned at Myra's strange sense of humor. Your definition of entertaining is really something else. Suddenly, Master Makarov interjected. Rhodes, when do you plan to head out again? Have you considered forming another team? Master, why are you bringing this up already? Rhodes smiled good-naturedly. I've just returned. Did someone pressure you into writing another apology letter or something? That's not it. Makarov replied seriously. It's November now, and the S-Class Wizard promotion trials will take place next month. With your skill level, if you put in a bit more effort, you'd stand a good chance of qualifying. However, do you remember how many missions you've actually completed? 4. Rhodes counted carefully. Although, one of those was mostly Myra guiding me, so it really should count as 3. Makarov sighed heavily. 4 months, 3 missions. Granted, each mission was challenging, and you completed them exceptionally well, but the sheer number of missions completed is just too low. The S-Class trials were set for mid-December, but candidates were typically selected at the beginning of the month. If Rhodes wanted to be eligible, he needed to significantly boost his record this month alone. Only 3 completed missions certainly wouldn't suffice. Chapter 143, He Can Fly. Hero Landing. Rhodes thought for a moment and asked. Master, the S-Class trials happen every year, right? If I don't participate this year, will there be another opportunity next year? Of course. Makarov nodded gently. Do you intend to wait until next year? Yes, I feel my current strength and experience aren't quite enough to truly earn the S-Class title. Even if I passed now, it wouldn't mean much without real growth. I'd rather train diligently for another year. Rhodes clearly understood that becoming S-Class was just a title that allowed you to take on higher-ranked missions. It wouldn't magically increase his abilities. Besides, relying purely on intelligence to compensate for strength wasn't his style. Who would prefer using their wits excessively if they had raw strength instead? Even if he attempted the exam, Rhodes wanted to truly earn that title. Since he wasn't desperate for S-Class missions yet, there was no rush. Makarov replied thoughtfully. Only one wizard passes the S-Class trials each year. Waiting another year means facing potentially stronger rivals. The younger guild members grow incredibly fast. Master. Myra interjected with slight annoyance. Why are you pushing Rhodes into this? Because Rhodes genuinely has potential. Makarev said sincerely. Precisely because Rhodes could refuse such a tempting opportunity, it demonstrated impressive maturity and clarity. On the other hand, perhaps he lacked a bit of confidence. This was something worth keeping an eye on. It's only been 4 months since he started learning magic. Myra insisted softly, glancing worriedly at Rhodes. It's far too soon. Let him decide for himself. Makarev understood Myra's concern, but he wasn't worried about Rhodes becoming reckless. Even if Rhodes managed to pass, there was a good chance he'd still hesitate to accept actual S-class missions. Or at least he'd join another experienced S-class team for support. Fine, think it over carefully. Makarev sighed and headed upstairs, hands clasped behind him. He had other matters to attend to. Myra looked at Rhodes and bit her lip slightly. Rhodes, I'm sorry. Rhodes smiled warmly. Don't worry, Myra. I understand your intentions. This isn't something to rush into, and I won't act recklessly. Myra nodded softly, returning his smile. She then turned her attention back to the guild register, scribbling notes. Distractedly, she crossed Rhodes' name out, rewrote it, and crossed it out again. No, you don't quite understand. I'm worried you'll think I'm doubting your capabilities. Rhodes watched Myra's odd behavior cautiously. Is this some new type of dark curse? Please spare me, Myra. I promise I'm innocent. Myra rolled her eyes playfully, laughing softly. Oh, go practice or something. Fine, fine. Rhodes chuckled, heading out to the backyard to resume practicing advanced flying maneuvers. After a brief moment, he summoned Worm. I have an important mission for you. Do it well, and you'll be rewarded handsomely. Meanwhile, Myra finished tidying the register and suddenly noticed a fluffy white creature sitting before her, its tongue hanging out adorably, its eyes wide with innocent mischief. Noticing her gaze, Worm eagerly rolled onto its back, showing off a cute pink heart-shaped belly, clearly begging for attention. Myra glanced toward the hall entrance knowingly. Even though no one was visibly there, she knew exactly who was behind this playful trick. Smiling softly to herself, she gently tapped the counter and invited warmly. Why don't you come up here? Worm flipped onto his paws, sizing up the counter and stool carefully, determined to conquer this daunting challenge. He took several steps back, charged forward bravely, and leaped as high as he could. Only to bounce comically off the stool and roll onto the floor with a soft puff. It didn't hurt, Worm's thick fur provided plenty of cushioning. But he felt utterly embarrassed. Worm's eyes began to water pitifully, and his tiny horns drooped sadly. Eventually, he turned around in frustration, plopped himself down, and sulked on the floor. The tiny creature squatted stubbornly for just a second before deciding that sitting was too tiring, and he sprawled out dramatically instead. Oh no. Myra said gently, stifling a giggle. I forgot you couldn't jump that high. Smiling warmly, she came out from behind the counter and scooped Worm into her arms. Worm's eyes sparkled mischievously. Though pretending to sulk, he carefully watched Myra's reaction, making sure he'd completed his assigned mission properly. After all, pretending to pout wouldn't hurt his chances of getting rewarded. Myra softly chuckled, gently stroking Worm's fluffy head. She brushed through his fur tenderly, scratching under his chin and rubbing his belly. How about some yummy treats, little guy? Worm immediately perked up with a joyful squeak. Delicious food always instantly cured any grumpiness. It wasn't quite clear who had been tasked with cheering up whom, but both Myra and Worm seemed quite satisfied in the end. The only victim in this adorable exchange was Rhodes' wallet. Several days later, after continuous practice, Rhodes was finally able to hover above the guild using his wings. Feeling confident, he dove gracefully through the air, soaring straight toward the guild's entrance. Unfortunately, he misjudged his landing height slightly. Thinking quickly, Rhodes adjusted midair into a heroic pose, landing dramatically at the guild's doorstep. Amidst applause mixed with playful jeering, Rhodes stood up proudly. Only to realize most of the applause was because people thought he had stumbled intentionally for comedic effect. Happy flew over excitedly, circling Rhodes several times and teasing playfully. Hey Rhodes, wanna race me? Winner gets a fish. You're on. Rhodes laughed good-naturedly. Let's see who can strike the most impressive landing pose. Aye, sir. Happy cheerfully executed a flawless cat landing maneuver, then quickly attempted to mimic Rhodes' dramatic pose. After struggling to copy the pose for a moment, Happy suddenly paused, confused. Wait a second. Why are we competing in poses instead of flying speed? Rhodes quickly thought on his feet, grinning mischievously. Because sheer speed won't impress a pretty little kitty. But a cool landing pose definitely will. A pretty little kitty? Happy's enthusiasm instantly returned, eyes sparkling eagerly. "Aye, sir." Apparently, cats could still be easily fooled. The Shadow Gear team, who happened to be lounging nearby, volunteered eagerly to judge the contest. Rhodes triumphantly claimed the prize. A fresh fish. Meanwhile, Happy sat sulking in a corner, enveloped in gloomy defeat. The root of his sadness wasn't just losing the competition, but because Natsu stubbornly refused to buy him another fish, insisting Happy had to win it back. Myra glanced at Rhodes reproachfully, yet with a playful smile. Taking advantage of poor Happy's innocence to steal his fish is pretty mean, Rhodes. Although watching him lose so earnestly was adorable. Rhodes raised an eyebrow. Is although really the word we want to use here? Myra just giggled. What else would fit better? Who was really being mean here? Rhodes inspected the fish with a hint of disdain, realizing it was indeed a bit too fishy smelling for his liking. Warm. Rhodes whispered to his fluffy companion. Go challenge Happy to another contest and wager this fish. Considering Worm's short legs and awkward movements, Rhodes expected an easy loss. Perfect for returning the fish. However, several minutes later, Happy now owed Worm yet another fish. Myra laughed openly at Rhodes' obvious disappointment, greatly amused by the bizarre outcome. It was quite a rare sight, a competition where both winner and loser ended up feeling unhappy. Except for Worm, who looked immensely proud. Rhodes sighed dramatically. Who on earth was judging this match? Had Happy somehow lost his status as the guild's most adorable member? I was one of the judges. Levy beamed cheerfully. You wouldn't believe how incredibly cute Worm was trying to hold that pose. Great, Rhodes thought sarcastically, amused and defeated. Who exactly was Worm's owner again? Me not knowing Worm's cuteness is like Kishimoto not understanding Naruto, Oda not knowing One Piece, or Aoyama not getting Conan, right? Chapter 144, Blue Sentinel. By mid-November, the air in Magnolia had grown noticeably colder. Early risers could already spot a delicate layer of frost shimmering on the withered yellow leaves and weeds along the streets. Rhodes had recently invested in a bathing appliance for his home, finally granting him the luxury of constant hot water. As the days grew chillier, his clothing gradually became thicker, and Rhodes found himself increasingly fond of carrying Worm whenever he went outside. The little fluffball radiated heat like a portable heater, making outings significantly more pleasant. Worm's popularity in the guild soared daily, everyone adored holding the lovable creature, and it was becoming harder and harder for them to put him down. Many guild members even jokingly asked Rhodes to summon more poros, wishing they could each have their own fluffy companion. Unfortunately, Rhodes had to disappoint them. Other summons could exist in multiples, but Worm was uniquely singular. His landlord, Goodman, had suddenly become quite popular lately. According to Goodman, the wood carvings Rhodes gifted him inspired his father to improve their carving techniques, resulting in their crafts becoming highly sought after. Similarly, Mrs. Molly had eagerly studied the fabric Rhodes gave her, using it to enhance her own textile work. As a token of gratitude, Goodman generously reduced Rhodes' monthly rent by 20,000 jewel, bringing it down to a mere 60,000 jewel. A remarkably low rate for such a comfortable home in Magnolia. Life was steadily improving, though Master Mikhailov remained troubled by Rhodes' continued reluctance to take missions. If things kept going this way, Mikhailov's retirement plans might need yet another delay. When exactly would Rhodes become S-class? Master. Rhodes approached him one day. Oh? Mikhailov perked up hopefully. Finally deciding to take another mission? Actually, I wanted to ask for your help. Rhodes explained, pointing toward the guild's backyard. Ah, are you planning a new takeover form? Mikhailov nodded approvingly, pleased Rhodes was looking to grow stronger. Not exactly. Rhodes hesitated. I'm still mentally preparing myself about that particular target. Truthfully, Rhodes wasn't keen on receiving the grop. Its grotesque appearance made him hesitant about what form he'd end up taking. However, its toxic abilities held considerable appeal for battles. Imagine the psychological impact of having a strike me and you'll be poisoned aura. Yet, the thought of being covered in warts, even temporarily, required careful consideration. Today, I'm planning to summon something bigger. Rhodes announced. Really? Excellent, let's go then. Mikhailov smiled, recalling Rhodes' earlier impressive summons like the Brambleback and his strange auxiliary magic. After discovering the Crest of Cinder's spell had healing properties, Rhodes humorously attempted using it daily to extend the Guildmaster's life expectancy. Though ultimately proving ineffective for longevity, Mikhailov cherished the gesture deeply. His children's concern was truly the best medicine. The guild hall bustled as usual, albeit slightly quieter, mostly because their loudest troublemaker was slumped over a table, sound asleep. Rhodes cast a curious glance at Natsu. It was rare to see him this lethargic unless he'd been recklessly snacking again. Did he eat something weird again? Don't worry about him. Mikhailov dismissed lightly. Slightly puzzled, Rhodes accompanied the master into the backyard, quickly focusing his magic energy. I summon you. Blue Sentinel. Rhodes completed his chant seriously, calling forth the name of the summoned creature. Instantly, a radiant blue glow illuminated the ground. Chunks of stone rose up, rapidly assembling themselves into a towering stone giant. Though not as immense as Master Mikarov's giant magic, it still stood impressively around 15 feet tall. Within its stone torso pulsed a vibrant blue sphere of energy, giving off an entirely different presence than the red sphere carried by the red brambleback. This was the Blue Sentinel, paired with its counterpart, red brambleback. Both held significant roles as powerful summons, frequently contested by others. Standing upright on two massive legs, the golem appeared even taller than the quadrupedal red brambleback. Still, its expression seemed a bit vacant, lending a comically gentle air. Master Mikarov maintained his protective stance, carefully watching Rhodes as always, ensuring the summoned creature was obedient before checking its abilities further. Rhodes gauged the magic within him, noting, "Summoning this one consumes about the same magic as the red brambleback. And it should have its own auxiliary magic as well." Pointing at himself confidently, Rhodes commanded, "Crest of Insight." The glowing blue sphere in the sentinel's chest shone brightly, releasing a wave of azure energy that enveloped Rhodes. Immediately, 3 transparent blue symbols materialized, gently orbiting around Rhodes before merging seamlessly into his body. A moment later, the symbols reappeared, repeating their elegant rotation and absorption. With each rotation, Rhodes could distinctly feel his magical energy regenerating slightly. The core function of the Blue Sentinel's Crest of Insight. However, sustaining the Sentinel still required considerable magical energy. Currently, the regeneration rate seemed slightly slower than his expenditure, causing Rhodes to frown thoughtfully. "Something's off," he muttered, perplexed. Curiously, Rhodes had an idea. Turning to Mikarov, he asked, "Master, would you mind giving it a try?" "Of course, go ahead." Mikarov agreed, stepping forward. Crest of Insight. Rhodes pointed toward Mikarov, releasing another burst of radiant blue light. Identical symbols circled around the guild master but refused to merge with him, simply drifting gently in orbit. Mikarov, unaware of the subtle issue, tilted his head slightly, puzzled. "Is it not working on me?" Rhodes shook his head gently. "No, master, you might need to use a bit of magic to see its true effect." "Oh?" Intrigued, Mikarov casually raised his hand and released a quick flash of light magic into the air. Instantly, the hovering blue symbols surged into his body, replenishing the magical energy he'd just expended before quickly regenerating again. "Is this capable of instantly restoring magic power?" Mikarov's eyes widened momentarily, a flicker of alarm crossing his face. He was aware of only one method capable of such rapid restoration, a closely guarded secret of fairy tale. "No, wait, that couldn't be right. It shouldn't be that powerful." Quickly regaining composure, Mikarov cast several potent defensive spells in rapid succession, intentionally depleting his magical reserves significantly. When the blue symbols reabsorbed into him again, he exhaled softly in relief. Thankfully, the regeneration wasn't unlimited, nor as instantaneous as he'd initially feared. Yet confusion lingered. At this impressive recovery rate, why was Rhodes still visibly losing mana? Rhodes smiled ruefully, understanding the issue perfectly. "It's because I'm still too weak." Indeed, this ability replenished magical energy proportionally, much like its original game mechanic. For someone as immensely powerful as Master Mikarov, the Crest of Insight allowed near-constant spellcasting in a short time, practically simulating unlimited magical output. However, with Rhodes' comparatively smaller magical reserves, the effect merely prolonged how long he could sustain the golem. Still, Rhodes wasn't discouraged. Even as he used mana, the ongoing recovery meant he could sustain the Blue Sentinel through prolonged battles, unlike the more demanding Brambleback summon that served mainly as a last resort trump card. Once his magic capacity improved, Rhodes knew he'd soon reach equilibrium, making the powerful summon effectively free in battle. With the Sentinel's considerable size and strength, even a simple punch from it would cause far more damage than Rhodes could on his own. Judging his remaining mana thoughtfully, Rhodes remarked, "I think I could attempt to take over this form in a few days." Mikarov glanced at him with concern. "Are you sure about that? Didn't you mention takeover consumes far more magic than summoning?" "True. I might collapse right after takeover," Rhodes admitted cheerfully. "But at least I wouldn't have to summon it again later. I'd gain a powerful new transformation." After some mental calculations, Rhodes decided carefully. It might be wiser to wait just a few more days to be safe. Chapter 145. Today is a special day with the extended endurance provided by the Crest of Insight. Rhodes spent additional time practicing with the Blue Sentinel in the guild's backyard. The towering golem enthusiastically swung its massive stone fists, though the confined yard limited its ability to move freely. "Come on, let's try that technique one more time." Rhodes encouraged. He had discovered that the golem could utilize certain earth-based magic, something definitely worth exploring. Master Makarov, watching anxiously nearby, called out. Just be careful not to damage the walls again. Shaking his head slightly, the guild master decided it was safer to return to the tavern. Other than the initial summoning and takeover process, Rhodes rarely required assistance during magic training. Understood. Rhodes replied cheerfully, pondering where he could find a larger training area. Someplace spacious enough for both the red brambleback and blue sentinels to stretch their limbs freely. The forest outside Magnolia seemed suitable, though Rhodes worried about safety if his magic reserves ran low after prolonged training. Finally, as his magical energy nearly reached its limit, Rhodes stopped practicing, engaged briefly in some physical training, and headed back inside the guild. He glanced curiously at Natsu, who was still slumped listlessly at a table. Oddly, even Gray sitting nearby failed to provoke any reaction from him. Nearby, Kana lounged with a drink, eavesdropping with mild disgust as Mikao and Wakaba exchanged boastful stories. Riza had recently returned from an S-class mission and was currently speaking with Master Makarov at the counter. Myra, however, was nowhere to be seen. Rhodes scanned the hall again but found no trace of her. Wondering if she had stepped out briefly, perhaps to the kitchen or the storeroom, he quietly approached the counter. "Thank you for your hard work," Master Makarov said kindly to Riza. Spotting Rhodes approaching, he smiled. "Ah, Rhodes, perfect timing. Could you assist Riza in finalizing the paperwork?" "Of course." Rhodes swiftly pulled out the guild register and pen, asking casually as he wrote. "Riza, that's some new armor you're wearing, right?" "Indeed, this is the Thunder Empress armor," Riza explained. "My usual armor was damaged and is currently being repaired. Does this look strange?" "Not at all," Rhodes replied honestly. "It actually looks refreshing." Riza's various armors and weapons were essentially magical artifacts. Most could be worn comfortably like regular clothing without much concern about magic consumption unless she was actively engaged in combat. However, some specialized armors required continuous magical energy just to wear, though these typically possessed immense power. Damaging Riza's armor indicated just how challenging her recent mission must have been. Rhodes almost drooled seeing the numerous zeros listed beside the mission reward. As he wrote, he suddenly paused, realizing something important. "Master, wait a second. This is an S-class mission. Is it really alright for me to register this?" "It's fine since the mission is already complete. Just keep the details confidential," Makarov reassured him. Guild members were typically forbidden from accessing S-class mission details prematurely to prevent foolish actions born from temptation or overconfidence. However, Rhodes was an exception. Though he doubted he'd take advantage of such an opportunity just yet. Time certainly flies. Is Rhodes already helping Myra with her duties? Very good, Riza remarked earnestly, her tone playfully resembling that of an older, approving guild member. "I only help out when she's not around or if things get too hectic," Rhodes explained, then paused, a thought crossing his mind. "By the way, where is Myra?" "She went to the church with Elfman," Makarov replied in a quieter tone. "Today is the anniversary of Lysana's passing." Rhodes was stunned. He looked up, the words taking a moment to sink in. "Has it already been a full year since that happened?" Riza added softly, her voice laced with sorrow. When Myra first joined Fairy Tail, she had been warm and friendly, eager to build bonds with everyone. But over time, tensions had risen between her and Riza, and for reasons neither fully understood, they often found themselves at odds. It wasn't until after Lysana's death that they finally started getting along. Though not in the way Riza had hoped. "If you're concerned, go check on them," Makarov said gently. "But also trust in Myra and Elfman. They're strong in their own ways." Rhodes quietly finished the paperwork, put away the guild register and pen, and looked to Makarov. "Master, I'm heading out for a bit." As he left, Riza watched him go. Rhodes really does care about his friends. Makarov smiled. "Of course. He's a member of Fairy Tail." So that was it. No wonder Myra hadn't came to see him summon the Blue Sentinel. She had even complained the last time that she missed the summoning of the Brambleback. No wonder Natsu seemed so subdued today. No wonder everyone's laughter had felt just a little quieter. Rhodes quickened his pace, heading toward the central cathedral. But as he walked, his steps gradually slowed. "I should buy flowers," he murmured. Stopping by a flower shop, he explained the reason for the bouquet. The florist silently prepared a bundle of pure white lilies for him. As he stepped outside, bouquet in hand, Rhodes looked down at his clothes. "I should really change into black." He quickly rushed home, changed into more appropriate attire, and then made his way toward Cardia Cathedral. Along the way, Rhodes tried to organize his thoughts. What should he say to Myra? How could he encourage Elfman? It had been a long time since he felt this nervous. Upon arriving at the cathedral, he approached an elderly priest and asked respectfully, "Excuse me, where is the cemetery?" "It's just around the back." The old man replied gently. "Thank you," Rhodes said softly. As the two passed each other, the old man suddenly paused and spoke again. "Stay calm, child." Rhodes stopped in his tracks, puzzled, and looked back. "A mind clouded with confusion and distractions is not fit to grieve properly," the priest said with a kind smile. "Before you step into the cemetery, take a moment to reflect on why you're truly here." Rhodes faltered. Was it for Myra? For Elfman? For himself? He glanced at the bouquet of white lilies in his hand. If his heart wasn't in the right place, did he even deserve to stand before Lysana's grave? "Thank you," Rhodes said respectfully, bowing slightly as the priest walked away. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward into the cemetery. "I am Rhodes, a wizard of fairy tale. Today, I am here to honor the memory of my fallen comrade, Lysana. That is all." The cemetery was silent, its stillness broken only by the faint rustling of wind between the gravestones. As always in such a place, visitors instinctively lowered their voices and tread lightly. It wasn't difficult for Rhodes to find the grave he sought. Elfman stood solemnly before the tombstone, while Myra knelt quietly beside it. Though there were two of them, their backs looked weighed down with sorrow. Rhodes felt a deep loneliness radiating from them. He approached slowly, deliberately letting his footsteps sound a little heavier, as if to announce his presence. As Myra and Elfman turned, he offered a quiet, "Excuse me, Rhodes?" Elfman blinked in surprise. "Why are you here?" "Master told me that today marks the anniversary of Lysana's passing," Rhodes said gently. "I came to offer her these flowers." Myra didn't seem surprised. She stood up gracefully and stepped aside from the front of the tombstone, giving Rhodes space. She bowed lightly in thanks. Elfman quickly followed suit. Rhodes nodded in return and turned to face the grave. The headstone was modest, marked with the fairy tale emblem, Lysana's name, and the years of her birth and death. Kneeling, Rhodes placed the bouquet carefully at its base. He recalled the smiling face of Lysana from her photos, and closed his eyes to offer a quiet prayer. After a moment of silent reflection and a heartfelt message spoken only in his thoughts, he looked back at Myra and Elfman. "I'm sorry for intruding on such a personal day." "Not at all," Myra said softly, her eyes still on the grave. "Thank you for coming to see her. Lysana would have been happy to know that someone new and exceptional had joined the guild." "Yeah," Elfman added quietly. "That's exactly the kind of person Lysana was." Chapter 146, Myra's favoritism. After Rhodes finished paying his respects, Myra knelt once more in front of the tombstone and whispered softly to Lysana. Rhodes gave Elfman a small nod and quietly stepped away, waiting outside the cemetery. A long while later, he saw Myra rise to her feet. She placed her hand gently on the tombstone, her fingers lingering for a few moments before she finally turned away. The three of them walked back toward the guild together, the atmosphere heavy with silence. "I'm okay," Myra said quietly. "Yeah," Rhodes replied, matching her tone. Myra glanced at him. "I thought you might say something like it's in the past, or tell us not to be sad." Rhodes shook his head. "That was my plan at first. But standing there at her grave, even I couldn't help but feel sad." The tombstone bore the date X768X782. Lysana had only been 14 when she passed. By the laws of Fiore, she wouldn't have even been considered an adult until this year. It was a life cut tragically short, a wound that was painful for those closest to her, and deeply regrettable to everyone else. When Rhodes saw the pain in Myra and Elfman's expressions at the cemetery, he found himself unable to offer any shallow words of comfort. Now, walking beside them, he exhaled slowly. "Master Makarov once said that grief is born from life and love. I can't stop you from feeling sad. That sadness is proof of your love for Lysana. But we remember the dead not to drown in sorrow, but to remind ourselves to cherish life and to keep moving forward with resolve." That sounds like something Master would say next, doesn't it? Myra looked up at the sky. "What do you think, Elfman? As a man, no matter what happens, you've got to keep living. And keep moving forward." Rhodes smiled faintly. "That's the best thing you could say. Still, if it were truly that easy, neither Myra nor Elfman would still be struggling to take over magic after all this time." As they neared the guild, Myra's usual smile returned. "Thank you, Rhodes." He shook his head. "Don't thank me for being reckless." "How could I not?" Myra laughed. It wasn't often that Rhodes let his emotions take the lead. And besides, hadn't he acted perfectly proper at the cemetery? He had honored Lysana with sincerity. After a pause, she asked, "It might get really busy soon. Can I count on you to help out a little more?" Of course. Rhodes, former tavern waiter, now officially promoted to assistant to the assistant of the guild master. He announced proudly. Will there be a raise? Myra grinned. Unfortunately, that position doesn't actually exist, so no raise. The three of them stepped into the guild together, and Rhodes continued with mock indignation. If this promotion doesn't come with a raise, I'm filing a complaint. Complaint received. And denied. Myra replied with a wink. Rhodes raised his hand in mock protest. I'll escalate it to the senior council, the inspection team, and the treasury office. Those are all me. Complaint rejected again. Myra swatted playfully at his arm, laughing. But as compensation, I'll buy you a coffee. Rhodes made a dramatic face. That's even worse. You're working me overtime and bribing me with caffeine? Sounds like I'll be stuck working all night. So what if it's inhumane? I'm a devil, remember? Myra tried to look menacing, but her cheerful smile betrayed her. So, are you coming or not? Of course I am. Only a fool would say no. Suddenly, Elfman stopped. Rhodes, wanna spar? Huh? Why? No idea. I just really feel like fighting right now. The guild erupted into chaos as soon as they heard. Get him, Elfman. Go for it, Elfman. It's your time to shine, Elfman. Mind your own business. Rhodes shouted, then added. We'll fight tonight. A wave of disappointment swept through the guild. Just when they thought Myra and Elfman were back to normal and a good brawl was about to start, Rhodes had to go and delay it. The crowd grumbled. One frustrated patron hurled a wine glass. If you don't want to fight, someone else will make you. Rhodes casually swatted the glass away with one hand. With the other, he gently nudged Myra toward the counter where Master Makarov was. Away from danger. This only seemed to rile the crowd further. Bottles, plates, and anything not nailed down started flying. Rhodes snatched a stool, spun it a few times with flair, and used it to expertly block the projectiles with a series of satisfying cracks. Then, with practiced confidence, he slammed the stool down and rested one foot on it. I have some experience with flying objects, he declared smugly. Rhodes. You jerk. Gray stood up from the ground, rubbing his back. The stool had been yanked out from under him. Rhodes didn't even glance his way, instead gazing off dramatically into the distance. I don't fight naked men. Gray blinked. Wait, when did I? Forget the details. Get him. Someone shoved Gray forward, and the crowd surged. The guild exploded into chaos. Rhodes had experience dodging flying objects. What about flying people? No fair. Where's the honor in that? He didn't know who punched him, but he kicked back instinctively. Someone else kicked him, and he countered with a swift elbow. A full-on brawl erupted, 1 man versus over 20. It was pure madness. Gray, flattened early on, was stepped on 3 times before rising to his feet. By then, he'd completely forgotten about Rhodes and tackled the first person he saw. Elfman, who had originally wanted to spar with Rhodes, got hit from several sides and likewise forgot his initial plan. What had begun as a collective mission to punish Rhodes devolved into a free-for-all. No one knew who they were fighting or why. It was just fists first, questions later. Eventually, someone lost restraint and cast a spell. That was the cue for others to follow suit. That's enough, you brats. Do you want to destroy the guild? Thunder Emperor's spear. Mikarov's voices boomed over the din. A giant spectral hand came down from Makarov, slamming half the combatants into the floor. Meanwhile, a surge of blue lightning from Rizza left the rest twitching in a heap. Rhodes was among those face first in the floor. Aye. Myra stood by the counter, watching with her usual amusement as chaos resolved itself. Her eyes eventually fell on Rhodes, sprawled dramatically in a crater with a resigned look on his face. Thanks to being pushed near Master Makarov earlier, she hadn't been hit by any wine bottles. Or by Elfman. A few minutes later, Rhodes sat sullenly at the bar as Myra gently dabbed potion on his bruised face. I got careless. Should have slipped out before Master lost it. He muttered, regretting staying for a few extra punches. He'd gotten greedy for damage output. Let's not make this a habit, Myra said, patting his shoulder gently before disappearing into the kitchen. She returned with 2 boiled eggs, peeled and still warm. Tilt your head back and look up. Rhodes obeyed, leaning back against the counter. From this angle, he noticed how pretty Myra looked. She gently pressed the warm egg to his bruised eye. It rolled slightly, soothing the tender spot. They really went all out this time. His eye was seriously swollen. It stung, but Rhodes couldn't help but chuckle. All things considered, this fight had gone pretty well for him. He didn't feel like he'd lost. At least, not in the ways that mattered. The rest of the guild, now licking their own wounds, scowled at the sight. Forget black eyes. Some had swollen foreheads, chipped teeth, and even busted lips. Since when did Myra treat injuries like that with so much care? Damn it, Rhodes. Let's fight again. Huh? Ursa, still in her Thunder Empress armor, turned her head. Everyone instantly fell silent. Forget it, next time. Chapter 147, Young people are full of energy. Rhodes didn't get to enjoy Myra's eye compression treatment for very long. Someone came in with a new commission, and Master Mikra passed the task off to Myra, leaving Rhodes to deal with his bruises on his own. Hey, Myra. Rhodes asked, eyeing the warm egg. Can you still eat these after using them for eye compresses? Probably best not to. Myra replied with a wry smile. But if you're curious, you can test your stomach's resilience. Rhodes thought about it. Tossing it seemed like a waste. So, he gave it a quick rinse and stuffed it into Worm's mouth. Naturally, Worm devoured it happily. That little guy could eat anything and never had an upset stomach. In fact, Worm seemed downright grateful. And even looked at Rhodes expectantly for more. Wait until I get beaten you up again. Rhodes said, tugging playfully at Worm's furry cheeks before tossing him through the serving window. Rhodes. Myra warned. You're going to make the chef mad. The wrath of the kitchen staff was no joke. Rhodes whispered. Just don't tell him it was me. Worm can't talk anyway. Myra tapped her chin, then slid over a stack of Guild Tavern receipts. Unless you help me finish these. Deal. Rhodes straightened the papers and picked up a pen, immediately diving into the calculations. But after a few seconds, he paused, got up, and slid onto the stool beside Myra. She glanced at him, whispering. Really? What? Nothing. Before the moment could go further, Jet rushed over and slapped a commission down on the counter. Myra. This one. Can you process it quickly? She took a glance at the request. This isn't too difficult. Are you going solo? Where are Levy and Troy? Troy rushed over with another request. Myra, this one. Please hurry. We've temporarily disbanded Team Shadow Gear. Oh. Right, it's that time again. Hey. Jet and Troy are sneaking ahead. I need to take a job too. The once peaceful guild suddenly exploded into movement as everyone crowded toward the job board. Out of the way, Nab. You're not even working. Who said that? I'm looking for a job that only I can do. No one cares. Move it. Poor Nab was lifted off the ground by the surge and slowly passed above everyone's heads before being tossed outside. What the heck just happened? Nab groaned, rubbing his backside as he stood up. He slumped beside Mikau, who was still calmly sipping his drink. Mikau nodded with the patience of a seasoned observer. Ah. Starting early this year, huh? Kids these days have too much energy. Wakaba added with a sigh. Then, turning to Nab, he asked. You're not joining in? Don't forget, the S-class exam's coming up. So that's it. It's the S-class exam. Of course, Nab jumped up dramatically, then immediately slumped. But without enough mission experience, I don't stand a chance. Then go take some jobs. That's what they're doing. Last-minute cramming, trying to prove themselves. Nab hesitated for a beat, then nodded with newfound determination. No. I'll find a job that only I can do. Mikau groaned, rubbing his temple. You're really stubborn. Wakaba laughed heartily beside him. Come on, isn't our entire guild full of people like that? Meanwhile, the space in front of Myra and Rhodes was steadily being swarmed. Elzik, Vegeta, Warren, Max, and others crowded forward, each trying to be next to take a mission. No wonder you said things would be hectic. Rhodes muttered, eyeing the growing crowd. Without the needing to be asked, he instinctively picked up the pen and started helping with the registry. Myra was already swamped. One at a time, please. No pushing. I was here first. No, I was. Myra, can we just skip the paperwork this once? Absolutely not. She said firmly. No one leaves without confirmation. Guild rules. Frustrated, the crowd turned their complaints toward Rhodes instead. Come on, Rhodes, speed it up. Seriously, who writes this slow? Rhodes frowned, confused. What's the rush? The S-class exam isn't until next month. Exactly. Which means we're running out of time to build our resumes. You just don't get it, rookie. Move those hands. Rhodes rubbed his aching temple, overwhelmed by their shouting. Then had an idea. He called out loudly. Ursa. Sudden silence. Moments later, her voice rang out clearly from the other side of the guild. Quiet down and line up properly. Whoosh. In the blink of an eye, everyone snapped into a neat line. There was still some elbowing and light shoving, but at least Rhodes could work in peace now. It's good to have a sister figure who doubles as a strict disciplinarian. Of course, the people now stuck at the end of the line all glared daggers at him. Why do you have to call Rhodes scratched the side of his head and got back to writing. Given how easily he attracted everyone's frustration, he figured if he didn't get stronger soon, his fellow guildmates were going to beat him senseless one of these days. After finally sending off the swarm of S-class exam hopefuls, Rhodes stretched his wrists. Are they always like this every year? Myra thought for a moment. More or less. Though it feels like they got an earlier start this time. Lockie chimed in. I think Jet tried to sneak in some early prep, and once everyone found out, things got out of hand. The guild hall was much quieter now. Those who remained were mostly veterans like Mikau and Wakaba, who considered themselves past their prime and didn't want to get caught up in the frenzy. Others, like Levy and Lockie, lacked the confidence to rush into missions, feeling it was too late to make a difference. Of course, Mirza didn't need to join the scramble. She stood with her arms folded, watching her guildmates stash off with determination, pride evident on her face. In the corner sat Natsu and Happy. Happy gnawed on a large fish atop the table, while Natsu dozed against the wall, snoring audibly. Not even a chaotic brawl or the job board stampede had stirred him. Should we take Natsu to the church? Rhodes asked tentatively. Myra shook her head gently. Natsu doesn't go to mourn. But don't worry. They'll be back to normal tomorrow. All right. Rhodes said, nodding before returning to his paperwork. With Riz's usual companion off teaming with Elzik, she found herself without anyone to talk to and took a seat at the counter. While many members were eager to prove themselves by going solo, Elzik was doubling down. Building a team and tackling tasks. At least he was finally using his head. Rhodes, aren't you planning to go on a mission? Riz asked as she ordered a small dessert. I heard from the master that you've been doing really well. Even Bisco had a lot of praise for you. If you keep pushing, you might just make S-class. I'm still a long way off. Rhodes replied humbly. I'm not in a rush. Besides, what exactly is in the S-class exam? It's hard to say. Riz admitted. The test is different every year, but one thing is constant. It's always difficult. She clenched her fist with burning determination. But with perseverance, you will succeed. It sounded so resolute, so passionate, that Rhodes almost believed it. Chapter 148, Arrangements. Mirza was always like this. Even if what she said sounded far-fetched, she truly believed it with all her heart. Myra chuckled. Maybe Mirza really does believe she passed the S-class exam thanks to sheer perseverance. Of course I do. Mirza nodded without hesitation. Then she glanced over, puzzled. Myra, wasn't that what you believed too? Oh my. Maybe so. Myra wasn't shy about reminiscing these days. She smiled and nodded in agreement. Rhodes watched her and thought her expression seemed to say, Mirza's innocence is oddly endearing. But not everyone was feeling cheerful. Kana, after a long break from drinking, picked up her barrel again, took a few large gulps, and then stumbled over to the counter. I think I want to quit the guild. She sounded completely dejected and even let out a hiccup mid-sentence. Mirza saw the look on her face and didn't have the heart to lecture her. Kana, she said softly. No matter what, saying you want to quit. That's going too far. But I've failed the S-class exam 3 times. Kana pointed accusingly at each of them. Mirza, Myra, and Miss Togan. Why do I always get matched up with monsters like you? Please don't point at me when you mention Miss Togan. Rhodes muttered, then offered gently. Look on the bright side. None of those monsters are competing this year. If you're selected again, this might finally be your year. Kana blinked blearily. That actually made sense. All the heavy hitters had already graduated. Maybe this year was different. She slammed her hand on the counter. Myra, give me a job. I'm ready. Myra smiled kindly. Of course you can. But you'll have to sober up first. I am sober. Elfman hadn't joined the rush to grab missions. Instead, he spent the evening training alongside Myra and Rhodes. That sparring match he'd asked for earlier? Still happening. He genuinely wanted to test himself. Myra acted as both coach and referee. Rhodes didn't need to hold back out of fear of upsetting Myra. In fact, if he didn't go all out or hesitated, she'd correct him on the spot. Elfman, on the other hand. Well, he didn't have a problem with holding back. The Strauss siblings took their training very seriously. Myra tried using her takeover magic again, but as usual, it consumed a considerable amount of magic for little result. This time, though, she had help. Rhodes summoned the Blue Sentinel and cast the Crest of Insight, channeling magic restoration to support her attempts. Elfman's jaw dropped. That's your new summon? The golem's sheer size, bathed in blue light, gave off an overwhelming pressure. For a moment, Elfman felt like he was staring down the King of Beasts. Was Rhodes really this strong now? Perhaps Rhodes still separated the strength of his summoned beasts from his own personal power. But to everyone else, this was his magic. It was his strength. Myra, still under the effects of the crest of insight, felt her magical energy surging back into her body with surprising speed. A magic that restores mana. Isn't this supposed to be something only sky magic can do? Isn't that lost magic? Elfman asked, eyes wide. He didn't know Wendy well, but he'd heard of sky magic before. That's manly. Rhodes gave the golem a firm pat on its ankle. Any higher and he wouldn't have reached. I only managed to summon this big guy today. The crest of insight is a unique secondary ability. The master said it's an additional effect. It's really something. Myra studied the glowing blue sigil circling around her. With support magic like this, more and more people will want to team up with you. I won't complain about that. Rhodes said with a grin. Actually, Elfman, you up for a mission? I spent way too much on winter gear now that the weather's changing. Time to earn it back. Teaming up? With me? It seemed Myra hadn't yet told Elfman about her plan for him. Rhodes seized the opportunity. Yeah, everyone's been doing solo work lately, and it's been tough finding a reliable partner. Just consider it doing me a favor. Myra shot Rhodes a look, scrunching her nose in mock disapproval. It didn't carry a hint of real anger. In fact, it looked more like a teasing pout. But what about helping Myra? It's fine, Elfman. Myra interrupted gently. Today was the busiest it'll get. Things will settle down soon, and I won't need as much help. Exactly. Rhodes added. And when things do pile up, we can always recruit the master for backup. Rhodes glanced at Elfman and felt a flicker of fondness. Not bad at all. He hadn't expected it, but somewhere along the way, he'd started enjoying Elfman's company. Maybe a few more missions together wouldn't hurt. They could grow stronger. And closer. As a team. Myra stood on tiptoe to straighten Rhodes' collar. Go ahead and pick a task tomorrow. Just treat it like a little outing. Rhodes nodded. Worst case, I'll take a short distance mission and be back the same day. Or the next. All right. Elfman agreed. The two, perfectly in sync, had the whole thing planned out. Early the next morning, Rhodes stood before the request board. Side by side with Nab. Nab never seemed to take any missions, but he still showed up like clockwork. Thanks to yesterday's mission rush, large swaths of the request board were already cleared. All that remained were a few ragged edges of parchment, clinging stubbornly weighted then hastily torn. Most of the missions that were short distance, low risk, and well-paying were already gone. Not surprising. Those were always the ones that vanished first. After all, everyone wanted performance metrics, and the best way to do that was with jobs that were nearby, paid well, and weren't too much trouble. After a while, Rhodes gave up browsing and wandered back behind the counter, resting his chin in his hand as he watched Myra. She raised an eyebrow. What's wrong? Weren't you looking for a job? Already did. Everyone else beat me to the good ones. Rhodes sighed. So I figured I'd just wait for you to go through the new requests and grab one of those instead. What? Just admit you're being lazy. Myra teased, closing the account book and pulling out a stack of requests. Then, as if recalling something, she added. But if I remember correctly, someone once said this kind of thing is an abuse of power. Rhodes waved a hand, playing it off. That someone must have been idealistic and naive. Luckily, I'm now the assistant to the assistant of the guild master, so if I help you post a job first and then immediately tear it off as Mage Rhodes, it's totally procedural. And for the sake of improving guild efficiency, we can, let's say, streamline some unnecessary steps. Perfectly justifiable. Myra chuckled, then began sorting through the papers. She selected a few that were already complete and fit Rhodes' criteria, handing them to him. As for the ones that were incomplete or poorly written, she either amended the details herself or rewrote them entirely. Correcting info like date, location, pay, client name, and task summary. Rhodes glanced through the stack and gave a theatrical sigh. And thus, the righteous Mage Rhodes has fallen. Corrupted by the wicked temptress Mara Jane. Myra, smiling sweetly, stepped lightly on his foot in retaliation. Chapter 149, Urgent Mission. This job. Myra hesitated, holding up the request form. Rhodes leaned in and read over her shoulder. Gathering devotion grass, reward, 88,600 jewel. Location, Galando's Snow Mountain. What's the issue? It's a fairly routine gathering mission, but the reward is unusually low for the danger involved. Myra explained. Galando's is home to some aggressive, carnivorous beasts. A job this risky would normally have a reward of at least 100,000 jewel. But this one's been flagged as urgent. Low pay, high risk, and marked urgent? Something wasn't adding up. Think there's more to it? Rhodes asked. What's devotion grass used for, anyway? Traditionally, it was used to treat common colds and fevers. Myra said, flipping through the details. But because it only grows in harsh, frozen environments. and alternatives are more accessible. It's rarely used now. However, in recent years it's been rediscovered as an effective treatment for a particular illness. She pointed to the client info. Just as I thought. The client's family has been infected and urgently needs the herb. He probably spent everything he had on treatment. Rhodes murmured, noting the oddly precise reward amount. Down to the single jewel. He took the request slip from Myra. Rhodes? Do you think Elfman and I can handle the creatures up there? They hunt in packs. Myra warned. And they're known to trigger avalanches as a defense mechanism, which is especially dangerous in snowy terrain. Rhodes shrugged. I don't mind pack battles. And if it comes to an avalanche, we can fly out. Alright, but be careful. It's not a very appealing mission, so I doubt anyone else would have taken it. You might be doing this family a real service. He nodded. He wasn't sure if this technically counted as undercutting the market, but he'd meet the client and judge for himself. Whether they truly couldn't afford more, or were just lowballing. Yeah. Myra agreed. Rhodes had clearly made up his mind. As for Elfman, she figured he wouldn't complain about the pay. Elfman he approached from the board. Sis. We've picked a job. Come take a look. Myra handed him the request and summarized the important points. No problem, sis. If you're a real man, you don't worry about the reward. If it had been anyone else, Rhodes might have joked. Then I'll take your share. But since it was Elfman, he simply said, let's go prepare. Meet back here in half an hour. And don't forget your winter gear. Manly. Elfman replied, dashing off without hesitation. Rhodes headed to the storeroom and library to collect supplies, then swung by his house to pack. Half an hour later, Myra eyed the two of them as they stood at the guild's entrance, geared and ready. Elfman, make sure to listen to Rhodes, all right? Got it, sis. He meant to challenge Rhodes again soon, but for now, he was all in. Myra turned to Rhodes and paused, as if wanting to say something more. In the end, she just looked him in the eye. Be careful out there. Rhodes gave her a confident smile. We will. Let's go. This time, Rhodes had left in a bit of a rush and hadn't had the chance to prepare much. So, he brought a book along to read during the carriage ride. Elfman glanced over curiously. What's that? Background on Galando's Snow Mountain. Rhodes replied, holding up the cover. It's always good to understand the mission terrain. Then he pulled out another book. A compact spell book. And handed it to Elfman. Take this. You might need it. Manly. If you're a man. Rhodes said with a grin. Then hold on to it properly. Don't make your sister worry. Elfman blinked, then narrowed his eyes. You're really thoughtful. Wait a second. Does that mean you're trying to go after my sister? Rhodes considered it. Elfman clearly preferred blunt honesty, but this wasn't exactly the moment for a confession. So, he gave an answer that was both truthful and evasive. Let's just say, I'm not ready to admit that yet. Elfman was taken aback for a moment, then huffed indignantly. What do you mean not ready to admit it, you bastard? Exactly what I said. And let's not bring this up to Myra just yet. Why should I do what you say? Then let's settle it the manly way. Rhodes said. Whoever wins our next fight gets to decide. That's fair. Manly. Elfman declared, immediately on board with the challenge. Then he remembered the towering blue sentinel Rhodes had summoned the night before. Should he ban that thing from their duel? No. No way. That wouldn't be a manly fight. Still. If only he could fully take over the Beast King again. His grip loosened, and the magic book Rhodes had given him slid onto his lap. He instinctively raised both hands to hold his head. Rhodes watched him quietly. Elfman still carried the scars from that day. He had forcefully taken over the Beast King to protect his family. An act born of desperation and love. It wasn't his fault. He hadn't even been conscious when it happened. And yet, he couldn't forgive himself. Myra says Elfman's a gentle soul, Rhodes thought. Rhodes had seen Elfman's old photos in the guild's album before. Back then, his entire demeanor was different. Softer, more reserved. The more gentle someone is, the harder it is for them to navigate through their pain. Rhodes gave Elfman a reassuring pat on the shoulder but said nothing more. If words alone could fix something like this, then Master Mikarev would have already healed him long ago. Even if there were things to say, timing mattered more. It took roughly 2 hours by carriage to reach the village where the client lived. Elfman, get ready. We're about to arrive. Rhodes said. Huh? Elfman blinked in surprise. How can you tell? Because my Scuttle Crab Scout's already been here for a while. Rhodes said, tapping the side of his eye. It saw our carriage approaching. Such a useful magic. Elfman tucked away the magic book and slung on his backpack. When they entered the village, the children playing nearby caught a glimpse of Elfman's intense expression and quickly scattered in all directions. Rhodes asked Elfman to wait while he approached an elderly man who looked particularly kind and approachable. "Hello, sir. I'm a wizard from Fairy Tale. Could you tell me where Mr. Kurt and Mrs. Weiss live?" "Kurt? Ah, yes, I know him. You're here about the illness, aren't you? Poor lad. He's barely hanging on. He used to drive a carriage to deliver goods out of town." The old man trailed off in a murmur before gesturing down the road. "It's that house over there. Yard with a stable, but no horse. That's the one." "That's an unusual way to give directions." Rhodes offered a polite thanks, then waved Elfman over and pointed toward the house. Still, a thought lingered. Had Mr. Carrot sold his horse just to pay for treatment? Chapter 150, A Small Accident. Mrs. Weiss opened the door and welcomed Rhodes and Elfman inside, offering them tea with practiced hospitality. Though the house was modest and neatly kept, it gave off the impression of a family that had once been stable but had recently fallen into hardship. This assumption was quickly confirmed. The person in need of the herb was Mr. Carrot, who lay bedridden in the adjacent room, too weak to get up. As Mrs. Weiss explained, Carrot had worked as a long-distance coachman, taking freight and passenger routes that earned him a decent living. His strategy had always been to take one big job and rest between trips, rather than hustling daily at the local market or transport guild. However, he had fallen ill after returning from his most recent assignment. Their savings had already been drained in attempts to treat him, and in desperation, the family sold their carriage and horse. Despite all of this, his condition continued to deteriorate. Only yesterday did a doctor from another town diagnose Carrot with a rare pulmonary infection, likely caused by inhaling miasma during one of his journeys. The only known cure was devotion grass, a rare herb that grew solely on the treacherous Galandos Snow Mountain. Unfortunately, that mountain was home to a vicious beast known as the Liban. For ordinary people, venturing there was a death sentence. Their only hope now lay in the hands of mages from the guild. "The current reward is all we have left," Mrs. Weiss admitted, her voice shaking slightly. "I know it's not enough for the danger you're facing, but..." She bowed her head and clenched her fists tightly. "If you would allow us, I can work to repay the rest over time. I'll do any job, as long as you accept the commission. Please." Rhodes observed her quietly. Her face was drawn and pale, her fingers worn and cracked from housework. Her clothes had a smudge on the hem that suggested she had neither time nor strength to care for herself. Despite her exhaustion, she remained composed, her desperation muted by dignity. Mr. Carrot, it seemed, was fortunate to have such a devoted partner. Elfman was visibly moved. He wiped at his eyes and declared, "Mrs. Weiss, you're a true man." Seeing her startled reaction, Rhodes smiled gently. "Don't worry. That's just his way of expressing admiration." He turned serious again. "As for the payment, we've already accepted the commission. We don't change the terms unless absolutely necessary. Our job is to retrieve the devotion grass quickly and safely. That's what matters now, isn't it?" Mrs. Weiss nodded, her eyes glistening. "You can count on us," Rhodes said. "We've already done the research and know what we're looking for. We won't fail." With a confident tone, he rose to his feet. "We'll head out immediately." "Right behind you," Elfman shouted, full of spirit, ready to take on the mountain. In Mrs. Weiss's eyes, one of them seemed calm and dependable, while the other radiated energy and determination. Both appeared capable and trustworthy. A sense of relief settled in her heart. As she watched Rhodes and Elfman leave the courtyard, Weiss leaned gently against the doorframe, glancing back at her bedridden husband. Despite her exhaustion, a faint smile surfaced on her face. As long as Kurt could be cured, everything else could be endured. She braced herself and stood upright. It was time to prepare a meal. When the mages returned, she needed to welcome them with a proper show of gratitude. Jenny and Hunter should be returning soon as well. "Weiss. Weiss." The sudden, urgent voice made her heart jolt. She stepped outside quickly to see what was going on. Mrs. Nepal, a neighbor, came running toward her in a panic. Rhodes and Elfman halted in their tracks at the sound of someone calling their client's name. "Weiss, something's happened." Mrs. Nepal gasped for breath. Someone saw Jenny climbing up the mountain alone. Weiss staggered, taking 2 steps backward until her hand found the wall for support. Her breath caught in her throat. Jenny. Why would Jenny? She didn't need anyone to explain. The answer was obvious. Her daughter must have gone off on her own, trying to help by searching for the herb to save her father. It was reckless. It was dangerous. It was exactly what a desperate child might do. But the news wasn't over. Hunter went after her. Mrs. Nepal added, her voice rising with panic. Weiss's legs gave way. She collapsed against the wall, sliding down to the ground in shock. The world around her seemed to blur. Her husband was gravely ill. Now both her children had disappeared into a treacherous mountain. Days of fatigue, grief, and stress had already worn her down, And this final blow stole the light from her eyes. No, they weren't lost yet. There was still hope. They could still be found. I'll get them back, Vice whispered, struggling to her feet. She didn't even notice the dust clinging to her skirt as she stumbled forward. Vice, no. Don't go up there. You'll die. Mrs. Nepal cried out. Vice didn't respond. Her mind was consumed with one thought: bring Jenny and Hunter home. Rhodes. Elfman called, his fists clenched in frustration. I know. Rhodes replied sharply, stepping in front of Mrs. Vice. He looked her in the eyes and said, We'll find them. Those were the words Mrs. Vice had been desperate to hear. They echoed in her mind like a lifeline, and she looked at the calm young mage with a face full of sorrow and fragile hope. Find me 2 pieces of clothing they've worn. Anything that still carries their scent. Rhodes said, not wasting another second. He clutched his pendant and called out firmly. Merc Wolf. In an instant, a massive 2-headed shadow wolf appeared in the courtyard, flanked by 2 smaller wolves formed from shadow magic. The sheer suddenness of their appearance sent a chill through Mrs. Nepal, whose legs trembled as she stumbled backward in fear. But Vice didn't flinch. Her eyes remained fixed on Rhodes. Their noses are extremely sharp. If your children are anywhere nearby, they'll find them. He gently ran a hand along the side of the larger wolf's head, repeating calmly. I need the children's clothes, or anything with their scent. His composure, his quiet determination, and his decisive action pierced through the fog of panic. Vice snapped out of her daze and bolted into the house. Moments later, she returned with 2 sheets from Jenny and Hunter's beds clutched tightly in her arms. Please. Bring them back. She whispered, her voice cracking as tears welled in her eyes. Rhodes had the wolves sniff the sheets to lock onto the children's scent, then gave a sharp signal. The 3 wolves dashed off without hesitation, noses to the ground, tails low, tracking through the village snow. Trust in the power of fairy tale, Rhodes said with confidence as he reached once more for his pendant. Scuttle crab. 2 scuttle crabs burst from the light, their powerful legs already bracing for travel. Elfman didn't wait for instructions. He climbed onto one with practiced ease. Rhodes mounted the other, and just before taking off, he looked back and spoke gently to Mrs. Nepal. I'm sorry if I startled you earlier. Everything happened so quickly. When we return, I'll apologize properly. But for now, could I ask you to stay with Mrs. Vice? Mrs. Nepal, still shaken, nodded quickly. Rhodes offered Vice one last smile. Soft, reassuring, sincere. Please prepare something warm for when we come back. It's freezing in the mountains, and the children might catch cold. Chapter 151, Want Something Sweet? Galando's snow mountain stood as a stark white monument above the village. Its slopes were blanketed in snow year-round. Only the southern base thawed briefly during summer. But it was now November, and even that small patch was frozen over. Bitter winds swept through the mountain, carrying fine snowflakes like sand over a beach. Even on a clear day, footsteps disappeared in minutes. Climbing or descending became a perilous challenge, especially when time was of the essence. The higher one went, the deeper the snow and the fiercer the winds. A single misstep could lead to a fall, followed by a silent burial beneath the snow. One mistake, and the mountain would claim another life. Yet in the face of such conditions, Jenny trudged forward. She scanned the frozen landscape, searching for the one thing that could save her father. Despite the heavy coat and fur-lined hat shielding her from the wind, her cheeks were red with cold, her breath coming in labored puffs. Devotion. Devotion. White, bell-shaped flowers. She whispered to herself, repeating the description like a mantra. It wasn't just to stay focused. It was her anchor. If she could find the herb, Dad could get better. If Dad recovered, Mom wouldn't have to carry the burden alone. And her brother wouldn't have to cry where no one could see him. Children often act with pure purpose, untouched by the weight of consequences. They believe their sincerity will carry them through. Jenny was one of those children. She just wanted to bring her family back to the way it used to be. And behind her, chasing after her tracks through the snow, was her younger brother Hunter. Following a similar resolve in his heart. Dad is sick. That means I have to help. I have to protect Mom and Sis. I have to make everything okay. The mountain was a dangerous place, and Jenny couldn't face it alone. 2 small figures, staggering and swaying, made their way through the blinding white, searching for a miracle. I found it. Jenny's eyes sparkled with hope. Nestled beneath a small outcrop of stone, a patch of deep green leaves peeked out from the frost. Hanging from them were delicate white blossoms, shaped like tiny bells, swaying gently in the freezing wind. Even surrounded by cold and snow, the flowers stood vibrant and alive. Jenny hurried forward and stumbled, falling face first into the snow. But she didn't mind. She didn't even try to stand up. Crawling forward on all fours, She carefully brushed aside the powdery snow and unearthed the herb, roots and all. She gathered each flower tenderly, placing them inside her coat like she was cradling her father's life. When she finally stood up, her legs wobbled beneath her. Exhaustion had set in, but she was determined to bring the herbs home. "Sis." The voice echoed faintly in her ears. Jenny blinked, unsure if she was hearing things. Her limbs ached, her breath was shallow. Maybe it was a hallucination. But then she saw him. A shivering figure, bundled in mismatched layers, his nose red and leaking, eyes full of worry. "Hunter. Hunter? What are you doing here?" she cried, stunned. "Of course I came for you," he said proudly, despite sniffling. "Mom said the mountain's dangerous. I had to protect my big sister." Jenny wasn't sure whether to be angry or laugh. She was the one who snuck up the mountain in the first place, so did she really have the right to scold her brother? "Idiot. I found the herb. Let's go back and save Dad." "Sis. Sister." Hunter's eyes widened in fear as he looked behind her. "What's wrong?" Jenny turned around, and her entire body froze. Standing behind her was a massive creature, the size of a bear, with the face of a rabbit and glowing red eyes. Laban. The beast raised its clawed limbs, ready to strike. Laban hunted by either killing, stunning, or mauling its prey in a single blow. Hunter threw himself forward and pushed Jenny out of the way, but Laban's claw still clipped him. His coat tore open as he tumbled across the snow, rolling several meters. Spots of blood dotted the white ground. "Hunter." Jenny dropped to the snow, completely ignoring Laban, and scrambled toward her brother on all fours. But as she drew closer, she noticed something even more terrifying. Behind Hunter was another pack of wolf monsters. Her lips trembled. Her face turned pale. It was over. "Pa." The Laban let out a warning growl, but 3 wolves lunged straight at him without hesitation. Jenny stared in shock. The wolves weren't going after her or her brother. They attacked Laban directly. One of them even had 2 heads. 2 normal merc wolves latched onto Laban's arms, biting deep, while the twin-headed merc wolf leapt up, slammed its claws onto the beast's shoulders, and tore into its ears with synchronized fangs. One of the wolves was knocked aside, but Laban crashed to the ground, bleeding and defeated. Jenny edged closer to Hunter, but before she could reach him, more Labans emerged from the snowy ridge. Jenny clenched her eyes shut, expecting the worst. But the pain never came. When she opened her eyes, a tall figure was standing in front of her. A man, his arm transformed into a monstrous shape, was shielding her, gripping one of the S-Claw's mitts wing. "You alright?" His voice was deep, calm, and powerful, like someone who had faced danger 100 times before. It was the voice of someone she could trust. Before she could answer, another voice called out from behind her. "This isn't good. The boy's injured and bleeding fast. You handle the beasts. I'll stabilize him." The tone was gentler, more composed. "Their numbers are a bit annoying, but fighting like this is manly." Jenny turned just in time to see Elfman throw a Laban. Yes, throw it. Off the mountain path like it weighed nothing at all. Brambleback. Red buff. That girl too. Never mind. You as well, Red buff. Rhodes raised his pendant once more. A soft red glow surrounded Hunter's small body, and the bleeding from his wounds began to slow, the worst of the damage fading as the light pulsed gently. Then the same warm light enveloped Jenny. She didn't understand exactly what was happening, but the heat washed over her like a comforting embrace. The healing effect of red buff works surprisingly well on injuries like these. Rhodes noted aloud. He hadn't expected the magic to provide warmth too, but now wasn't the time to dwell on that. Every second counted. Without hesitation, he pointed forward and gave the order. "Brambleback, charge." The massive tree beast roared and lunged into the fray, swiping its heavy limbs through the oncoming pack. 3 Labans were sent flying like rag dolls, skidding across the snow with force that left deep trails behind them. Some of the creatures that had taken hits from Elfman still twitched, slowly pushing themselves upright. But those struck by the brambleback didn't move again. Their limbs spasmed once, then went still. It looked like the brambleback had barely tried. But the damage was no joke. Even so, Rhodes quickly dispelled the summon and returned it to the rift. That thing burned through mana way too fast, and right now he needed to conserve as much as he could in case Hunter's condition took a turn for the worse. As the summoned merc wolves and Elfman tangled with the rest of the Labans, Rhodes knelt beside the injured child. He dug into his backpack, pulling out bandages and medicine, and got to work dressing the wound. He turned to Jenny with a calm, reassuring voice. "You're Jenny and Hunter, right? Don't be scared. We're mages from Fairy Tale. Your mother sent us here to bring you home." Hunter's bleeding had stopped. His breathing was steady again, and it looked like he just needed to rest. "You were very brave, both of you. You did well. We'll be back at the village soon. Rhodes wrapped Hunter gently in a clean, padded coat to protect him from the cold. Then, after checking his temperature, he turned to Jenny and gave her a small smile. He reached into his bag again and pulled out a wrapped piece of chocolate. Hey. Want something sweet? Chapter 152, Brother and Sister. To prepare for potential food shortages during missions, it was standard practice to bring a bit of dried food and sugar for emergencies. Of course, it absolutely wasn't to lure little girls with candy. Jenny stared at the chocolate offered to her, then glanced at the older man holding Hunter and smiling warmly. Around them, the summoned beasts were locked in fierce combat. Her eyes welled up with tears. And then she burst into sobs. She had been terrified. She thought Laban was going to eat her. And her little brother too. There. It's all right now. Are you cold? Hungry? Does anything hurt? Rhodes was momentarily flustered. He wasn't exactly experienced in comforting crying children. Just stay here for a bit, okay? I'll be right back. He gently placed Hunter next to Jenny, then summoned Worm to act as a warm, furry heat source for the siblings. Partial takeover, Krug arm. To conserve magic power, Rhodes activated a partial takeover. Both arms became encased in rugged stone-like armor. It was time to join the battle directly. The crab form lacked offensive strength. The wolf and raptor forms were too wild and vicious for close proximity to children. The Krug was the most balanced choice. His left fist slammed into Laban's stomach, causing its body to ripple before crumpling over. Then his right fist struck another across the head, knocking it unconscious in a single clean hit. Compared to the chaotic biting of the summons or Elfman's single-arm takeover brawling, Rhodes' control technique was far more efficient. Each strike cleanly removed a threat. Manly. Elfman shouted with admiration. I'd recommend toning it down. Rhodes warned mid-swing. If an avalanche hits, we won't be able to run with 2 kids. Manly. Elfman whispered the word this time, still beaming with pride. Rhodes laughed as he fought. Elfman really could be adorable when he wasn't shouting. The battle eventually wound down. Lubans lay scattered across the snow like fallen titans. Considering their strength and numbers, an average mage probably wouldn't have made it out. The real problem wasn't individual power. It was scale. One wizard couldn't possibly deal with dozens of creatures alone. Not unless their magic packed serious destructive force. Elfman was breathing heavily, wiped out from the fight. These rabbit things fight harder than they look. Manly. Yeah, no time to relax. Rhodes said, eyes scanning the snowy horizon. We've got to get the kids down the mountain. No telling how many more of those things are out there. But we haven't found the herbs yet. We'll come back for them. We can't risk bringing the kids any higher. Jenny clutched Worm tightly and spoke up timidly. Big brother, I actually found the herb. Rhodes blinked. Somehow, Worm and Jenny had already become close. The furry creature kept nudging her like she was its longtime trainer. Honestly, he felt his own social skills were being outshone by a summon. It hadn't even been that long. Maybe it was because she still hadn't eaten the chocolate he gave her. You found it? Rhodes asked, genuinely surprised. Jenny nodded enthusiastically. Yep. You're amazing. That's seriously manly. Jenny scrunched her face. What did that even mean? She wasn't Hunter. Alright then, let's get down this mountain fast. Rhodes lifted Hunter into his arms and nodded at Elfman to carry Jenny. Jenny was a little nervous at first, but once she felt the strength in Elfman's arms and a steady warmth through his coat, she relaxed. There was a sense of safety that couldn't be put into words. Worm happily waddled beside them on the snow. It didn't seem bothered by the cold at all. In fact, it looked completely at home, occasionally hopping ahead to scout the path with its uncanny mountain instincts. Rhodes had already sent the other summoned creatures back to conserve his magic. For now, he kept watch using only his own senses. Thankfully, the descent went smoothly. When his mana reserves were nearly full again, Rhodes summoned the bramble back once more to cast red buff on Hunter and then quickly dismissed it again. Hunter's complexion brightened immediately, a healthy glow returning to his cheeks. Meanwhile, Rhodes's own face turned noticeably pale. You okay? Elfman asked, concern in his voice. I'm fine. Just need to rest a bit. When his magic was running low, the cold hit harder. Rhodes was thankful he had the foresight to layer up properly. As they approached the village, some warmth returned to Rhodes's face. And just then, the boy in his arms stirred. Sis. Run. Hunter suddenly shouted as he opened his eyes. Jenny's eyes welled up, but she forced a smile and huffed. Idiot Hunter. It's okay now. Huh? Hunter blinked around in confusion. Last thing he remembered, he was flying through the air after Laban's swipe. Did that mean he got slapped all the way from the mountain to the village? We were saved by the big brothers. Jenny explained, her voice trembling with relief. And as soon as Hunter realized they were safe, his face crumpled. And he burst into tears. He was scared too. He didn't even remember how he had found the courage to shove his sister out of harm's way. "You dummy," Jenny huffed, wiping her own eyes. "Now hurry up and say thank you." "Thank you. Thank you, big brothers." "What?" "You're welcome," Rhodes replied with a small smile. But he paused, deciding it might be better to let their mother handle the real scolding later. "Just try not to wipe your snot on my coat. Winter gear's a pain to clean, right, Elfman?" "Elfman? Huh? Oh. I'm just glad you two are okay." Elfman's answer felt a bit off. Rhodes blinked, noting the distracted tone. "You alright? You've been spacing out." "I'm fine." "Really?" Elfman muttered, walking ahead with his head lowered, carrying Jenny gently in his arms. In truth, Hunter's actions had stirred something deep within him. That desperate push to protect his sibling. He knew that feeling. He had once thrown himself into the jaws of danger, taking on the Beast King's form with no regard for the cost, just to shield his sisters. But unlike today, things hadn't gone well. His sacrifice back then had only led to tragedy. This time, though, these children were lucky. And maybe that was enough. Jenny looked up curiously at the tall man carrying her. He had such a tough face, like a scary grown-up, but when he smiled. "Big brother? Thank you for protecting me," she said softly, her smile sweet and genuine. "Brother Elf." For a moment, the image of a familiar girl flickered in Elfman's mind. "Lisanna." "Huh?" Jenny blinked in confusion. "Nothing," Elfman said quickly, gently ruffling her hair with his free hand. "Just don't do something so dangerous again. Your mom was really worried. And so was your brother." "Okay," Jenny murmured, guilt tugging at her voice. Elfman smiled. At least this time, he had protected someone. Rhodes glanced over, watching the change in Elfman's expression. His heart stirred with hope. If that flicker he saw meant what he thought, then maybe Elfman was finally healing. And if he was healing, then so was Myra. But he couldn't jump to conclusions. This was just a moment, and healing wasn't simple. Still, if missions like this could help even a little, then maybe they could make a difference. Escort missions. Rescue jobs. Healing requests. Anything that let Elfman protect, not regret. And maybe, in time, little by little, that lingering guilt, the one rooted in his heart because of his kindness, might finally begin to fade, healed by that same kindness. For the first time in a long while, there was a glimmer of clarity. Chapter 153, How About a Fur Coat? When Rhodes and Elfman returned to the Weiss home with the two children, Hunter was mostly unharmed aside from the tear and faint blood stains on his cotton coat. Mrs. Weiss immediately burst into tears as she hugged her children, relief overtaking her. The children clung to her, crying too. Rhodes had already explained the situation with his usual knack for hitting the key points. Jenny and Hunter added their own versions, recounting their snowy adventure in broken pieces. Jenny spoke about how scared she had been, and how powerful her two big brothers were. Hunter, meanwhile, talked about how painful it was to get hit, and how amazing the red healing magic had felt. Weiss was simply overwhelmed with gratitude. "Thank you, truly. If anything had happened to them, I don't know what I would have done. It was just something we did along the way." Rhodes replied modestly. "In fact, it was your daughter who ended up completing the mission." He scratched the back of his head, feeling a bit awkward now about accepting the reward. "We should let the doctor examine Mr. Cart first." "Yes, of course. I'll go fetch him now." Mrs. Weiss took a few hurried steps but turned back to hug her children tightly again. "Mom." Jenny sniffled, remembering the lecture she'd gotten from Elfman on the way home. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have climbed the mountain without telling you." Hunter followed quickly. "Me too. I'm sorry, Mom." Mrs. Weiss gave them a soft smile. "First and foremost, I'm just glad you're both safe. I'm proud of how brave you were and how much you care about this family." The kids looked comforted, until their mother released them and her tone turned firm. "But from now on, you are absolutely, 100% not allowed to do anything that dangerous again. Understood?" "Yes." They both chirped. Whether the message truly sank in was hard to say, but Elfman certainly seemed to have taken it to heart. Even after the doctor arrived, he was still repeating her words to himself under his breath: bravery. And caring for your family. Rhodes gave him space to reflect and followed the doctor to check on Mr. Carrot. After inspecting the devotion herb Jenny had brought back, the doctor quickly began brewing a potion on the spot. Not long after Carrot drank it, his eyes fluttered open. Can a lung treatment work this fast? Rhodes whispered to himself. He wasn't an expert in healing magic or medicine, so maybe it was just a very potent local recipe. As Mr. Kurt was helped into a sitting position and began speaking again, Rhodes could practically feel the joy radiating from Mrs. Weiss. Wait a second. Something about Kurt's face looked familiar. You're... Wait, aren't you that wizard? Kurt coughed between words, his voice still weak. Weiss gently helped steady him. Yes, dear, that's right. These wizards rescued Jenny and Hunter. No, I mean... He's the one who turned into a wolf. Rhodes blinked. Hold on, you're the carriage driver from that time. The guy who worked for that miser who'd rather save coin than his crew. Back then, the businessman had been memorable for all the wrong reasons, and Rhodes had felt genuinely bad for the man driving his cart. Now he could finally put a name to that face. Recognizing him, Kurt laughed faintly, nodding. He didn't seem to mind the not-so-flattering description of his former employer at all. That businessman was the kind of stingy person who valued profit more than lives. To be honest, Kurt believed that his illness might have stemmed from working for someone like him. Whenever Ben chose routes for his deliveries, he only cared about shortening the distance. He never considered the dangers involved and always took the paths other merchants avoided. He'd often boast that he built his wealth by daring to tread roads no one else would. Kurt sighed and said, "You saved me again. To be precise, it was your doctor and your family who saved you." Rhodes replied sincerely. "You've got an incredible wife and 2 wonderful children." Kurt turned to Weiss and took her hand into his own. Rough, weathered, and trembling. From the calluses on her fingers, he could feel just how much she had endured over the past days. His lips moved to silently mouth 2 simple words, "Thank you." Weiss smiled and shook her head gently. All she had wanted was for him to get better. "Doctor, how is Mr. Kurt doing?" Rhodes asked, hoping to wrap up the task and return to the guild. "He's stable for now," the doctor replied. "But the illness has gone untreated for too long. He'll need at least 1 more dose of the medicine tomorrow." Rhodes nodded. 1 more dose, huh? What about a full recovery? With proper rest, he can recover gradually. That 2nd dose will speed it up significantly. The doctor explained. But there aren't enough herbs left. That's no problem. We'll go gather more, Rhodes said without hesitation. Weiss grew anxious. She thought of the blood still crusted on her son's coat and said, "Mr. Rhodes, the snow mountain is too dangerous. Do you really intend to go again?" "Yes," Kurt said, though his voice was weak and interrupted by a cough. "Please, rest. Take it slowly. This is our job," Rhodes answered calmly. "And besides, most of the herbs were found by Jenny. That counts as your contribution, so you don't even need to pay. Mr. Rhodes." Rhodes gave a simple wave and walked out of the room, leaving behind only the image of his confident back. "Elfman," he said. "Can you still fight?" "Yeah," Elfman said, now completely composed. "What's going on?" "We'll need to make another trip." "All right, but are you okay to go?" "We've already rested long enough. We can take it easy on the way up. By the time we reach the mountain, I should be fully recharged," Rhodes replied. "And this time, let's avoid fighting if we can." Had it not been for searching for the missing children earlier, Rhodes wouldn't have stormed the mountain and thrown himself into battle with a horde of beasts. After all, their mission was to gather the herb, not clear out monsters. The 2 bundled back up in their thick winter clothes and set off once more for Galanto's snow mountain. Before dusk fell, they returned to the village. Without the chaos of a search and rescue operation weighing them down, Rhodes followed his original plan with flawless efficiency. Not only did they gather a hefty bundle of devotion grass, he also brought back 2 unconscious loved ones on their way down the mountain. Rhodes joked that the beasts might have suffered heat stroke. His plan was to bring them back, strip the fur, cool the bodies, then either give them a hot bath or toss them beside the fire to defrost. "Elfman, what do you think about turning the fur into coats?" Rhodes asked as he nudged one of the beast's thick belts with his boot. "Coats?" Elfman reached down and stroked Illibon's snowy white fur. "It's actually really high quality. If I give this to my sister, I bet she'd be thrilled." Rhodes nodded with mock enthusiasm. "Exactly. I was thinking the same thing. I'm the one giving it to her." Elfman shot him a glare. Rhodes raised both hands in surrender. Of course, of course. Yours goes to your sister. Mine's for myself." After all, he did help take them down and had the idea in the first place. If they were splitting the spoils, he'd definitely earned at least half. And besides... Hey. Elfman narrowed his eyes. Something about Rhodes's tone didn't sit right. Chapter 154, I hope you never forget that you gave it your all. The mission to retrieve the herbs had been a success. If there was one lingering regret, it was that they didn't take the reward, instead bringing back an IOU. Both Rhodes and Elfman agreed. Mr. Kurt's family was in no condition to hand over their last savings. They needed time to recover and rebuild. Forcing them to pay now would only make their lives harder. But Mr. Kurt and Mrs. Weiss held firm. Even if they couldn't repay the people who had saved their family twice over, they couldn't allow themselves to offer nothing in return. Not even the smallest token of gratitude. Rhodes had pointed out that most of the herbs had been found by Jenny, but Mrs. Weiss insisted. Jenny never would have made it back without their help. So, Rhodes compromised. He agreed to an IOU. With no interest and a repayment deadline of 100 years. To cover their meals and stay, they used the meat from the tulips they'd brought back. The remaining meat was saved for Mr. Kurt to help him regain his strength. Early the next morning, the two of them departed the village. Before leaving, they made a point to formally apologize to Mrs. Nepole next door and even gifted her Laban leg as compensation. The villagers had never seen such ferocious beasts up close and crowded around the Kurt household, eager to buy cuts of Laban meat. Rhodes didn't involve himself in those details. He simply hoped the sales could provide the family with a bit of starting capital for a new beginning. Being able to save a family on the verge of falling apart. It brought a quiet kind of joy and fulfillment. Rhodes realized that as he grew stronger, so too did his ways of making a living. Even if he didn't continue life as a guild wizard someday, he could still survive comfortably by hunting, selling meat, and trading pelts. But that would be a last resort. If possible, he still hoped to stay in the guild just as he was now. And maybe one day, find a gentle, beautiful wife. Sitting in the carriage, Rhodes ran his hand over the Laban fur they'd cleaned and prepped. The next step would be to find a good tailor. Elfman also held a belt, neatly folded on his lap. According to the village's local tanner, his was higher quality than Rhodes's. So Rhodes had very generously handed it over to him without argument. But Elfman's mind was elsewhere. He stared blankly out the window, lost in thought. Seeing this, Rhodes decided to pry a little. Still thinking about what happened? Elfman gave a silent nod. He wasn't thinking about Jenny and Hunter anymore, not directly. His thoughts had turned inward. Did I do something wrong back then? Rhodes paused for a moment before replying. Did you do everything you could? Of course I did. The three of us gave it our all. We had nothing left in us. If we didn't. Elfman trailed off, his voice tightening. Did you ever blame your sister? Rhodes asked. Blame her for taking that mission, for being too weak to protect you both? For not being enough? What? No. Of course not. Elfman's voice rose, defensive and firm. It wasn't her fault the mission failed. Besides, Lysana and I. We're wizards too. We can't just expect our sister to carry us forever. Exactly. Rhodes looked him in the eyes. Lysana is a wizard in her own right. Even if you're her brother, you shouldn't underestimate her resolve. But I didn't go in prepared to control the beast's soul. I lost control. I did it with my own hands. Elfman clutched his head with both hands, his voice shaking. The memories of that day overwhelmed him, and the man broke into tears, weighed down with regret. It wasn't you. It was the Beast King's consciousness that took over. Rhodes placed a firm, reassuring hand on his shoulder. You did everything you could. All three of you have good hearts. And I believe Lysana would want you to show that same kindness to yourself. To remember that you fought with everything you had and to accept who you are now. Guilt and self-blame won't make you stronger. They won't bring you closer to the person Lysana looked up to. But facing forward and accepting yourself. Maybe that's what she'd admire most. Rhodes had been holding on to those words for a long time. Since the day he made it his mission to help Myra find closure. If he'd said them back then, in a calm moment, maybe they would have only stirred a little emotion, then faded away. Like when he tried to comfort Myra in that quiet cafe before. But now, in this moment, they might actually make a difference. Accept myself. The way Lysana would admire. Elfman murmured. Big brother Elf, don't cry anymore. He could hear a memory. His sister's voice. Just like when the villagers avoided him. Just like how Sis used that power to protect us. This time, it's our turn to protect her. Another memory. The day he first learned to use takeover magic. Elfman. Do you think we deserve to try forgiving ourselves? His sister had asked that just a few days ago. All those moments replayed in his mind, overlapping. Slowly, Elfman wiped the tears from his face. It was still hard. But he wanted to try again. I won't cry anymore. Man. But those tears hadn't quite stopped yet.